Good afternoon, family. This is Bliss on the Spot. I'm Will Milton. We got RIcoh, Scott, Coco, Sandy Paradise Lady, Carolyn Victorian, special guest, Kevin Hedge.
Yes.
Woo! Woo!
Welcome, Kevin.
Well, now I'm kind of put off a little bit by Will because we discussed being family, and then he called me a special guest. From family, I'm in the family, so so I'm not a special guest. I'm here with my brothers and sisters.
There you
Yes,
go.
you are. Yes, you are.
That's right. Well, we are family for sure, definitely. Even households got family guests, so family guests, welcome. Kevin Hedge in the building.
There you go.
Yes, sir. Kevin, it's an honor, privilege to have you here with us. You are a man that wore plenty of hats in the music industry. You've been around over 2 decades and still relevant today. So if it's okay with you, can we just jump right in?
Hey man, I'll just go, man.
All right. All right. So what was your introduction into music?
Oh, as a kid, like 7, 8, 9, even, I lived in a house that always had music playing. My aunt, who kind of raised me, she was very much a social person, and she would always throw parties and things and invite friends in. And they would play the music of the day, which is Motown and music of soul 70s. So that's what got me interested in it. And then as a young man, I would man remember the component sets that had the 8-track player and the so I would man that. I would be the one with the 45s and putting them on and playing them for the party. As a kid at 8, 9 years old, it was just something that I loved to do. Something that interests me. So that's kind of the introduction through my family, through my mother and my aunts and all of them.
What's a record or song that you remembered most during that time?
You talking? This is hard, man. It's so many. A record that inspired me, or just remembered the most during that time.
So what if we said what record best represents that time for you?
Anything by Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
That's all right.
Anything.
I can rock with that.
In particular, first time I had a crush on a girl, they did a cover of the Beatles, Got to Get You Into My Life.
Wow.
Yes.
I
Good
just
one.
listening to that song, thinking about her.
Aw.
That's cute.
All right. So when was Blaze formed?
Oh,
Like, you can get us into the history of like how that
I
started.
really don't have a year. Like, I can't remember a year. Let me see. I got out of high school in 83. I was 17. I think in 83, we started around the end of 83. Chris Herbert, who was the original member, him and I were best friends from kids. What had happened is his mother had passed when we were young. And because we were friends, I wanted to do something that would inspire him. And he wanted to sing. So because I grew up here in this metropolitan New York area, and I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday, how remember when we were still in grade school, going into high school, our older siblings went to the garage, to Zanzibar. So we aspired to go to the garage in Zanzibar. So the music from the garage in Zanzibar was the music that we grew up to.
That's true.
And
Very true.
in all honesty, it was Chris wanting to sing and then listening to the music of Boy Jarvis and Jason, in particular, the music's got me. I said to him, we could try to do this kind of music. And he wasn't familiar with it, but because I grew up loving the music and wanting to DJ, that was the music that inspired me to want to get him involved with singing and inspire him in his life because his mom had passed. So that's really what it is. I mean, I always say Boy Jarvis, if it hadn't been for him, there would be none of us.
Mm.
He is, he's a saint to me.
Mm,
And I had the opportunity to know him. So, at a young age, we met him.
mm,
But that was it. It was just being inspired by the older siblings going to Zanzibar, the garage, and the clubs of the time. That was the music of the time, whatever Larry played, Frankie Crocker played on the radio. So we would hear it. Then they would have the guest DJs come on the radio. Larry would come on BLS sometime, and Shep Pettibone was on 98.7.
mm,
And those guys,
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
so those guys inspired me, and that was the music I wanted to do, really just to show some love to my friend. That's how this got started. So that was, say, 1980. Well, before that, like 81, 82, 83 is when we actually started writing songs together. Um, what You're Gonna Do was the first song. Well, maybe not the first song. Yearning was the first song. And then we just kept going from there. And What You're Gonna Do for Love got us signed to Emergency Records. And the gentleman, Curtis Urbina, who worked for Emergency, decided to do a spin-off label and call it Quark. So the Blaze What You're Gonna Do record was the first release on Quark Records. And interesting, Will, he paid us $500. That was the advance for that record. That wasn't even enough to cover the studio time.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to try to go in the studio and make the record. Back then, there was no Pro Tools. There was no in-home recording. You needed to go to a full-on professional production studio.
Mm-hmm.
That would cost you anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500, maybe even $2,000. So what I did to get started was I sold my turntables, and I think I got another $700 for the turntables. I added that to the $500, and we made a deal with the studio to go record it for $1,200. We recorded What You're Gonna Do for Love, and I hate to say that, and the rest is history. So that was how really we got started. That was about 1984, 85. But we had did records before that. I don't know if you know Hunter Hayes.
Yeah.
We produced a record called Are You With It on him, and then we wrote and produced This Time for Hunter Hayes. And then we had did other records that didn't have necessarily the Blaze name, but we were in the studio working to do this. I mean, it was every day. That there's nothing else I wanted to do with my life but this. So that's it. Like I said, I'm the manifestation of the universe, and conspiring to give you what you want.
right. Kevin, What You Want to Do for Love. Now, when you did it, was it in a demo format? Did you have like a 4-track studio in your house, a keyboard, and just took it to another studio, dumped it? And
yes. So even going back before that, because it's hard to remember in order, but before that, I worked at Moving Records.
Yeah. Good old Abby.
I used to be a salesperson in that store. I worked for free. And a gentleman named Carlton, that's how bad I wanted to do this. Gentleman named Carlton Roseberry came into the store, and he told me about a 4-track recording studio that was in a building in East Orange that he worked out of. So I naturally went over. I met a gentleman named Mikael Muhammad, and he said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to learn this. I had some experience at working in the studio early on, like when I was 13 and 14, I was like an intern at a studio, basically cleaning up and getting coffee. But when I got to the 4-track, that's when I really learned about understanding how to engineer and record music. And we had something called, I don't know, you might not remember this, the MSQ 700 by Roland. That was one of the first
sequencer.
Right. And we had a Lindrum. And a Lindrum was a big deal back then. Lindrum was a real thing. Yeah. And he had those things. And so what I learned to engineer in his studio on the 4-track, in return, I would work in the studio and engineer his paying product, and then he would give us free studio time. to record myself, Josh, and Chris. He would give us the free studio time, and then we started learning how to put records together. We started like anybody else. Well, you remember the DJ record, Mix Your Own Stars?
Yeah.
So we started with that beat. And we started with Josh playing keyboards over that beat.
Mhm.
And as we learned about drum machines and things, then we could start adding our own beats, really just copying the beats that we heard that was coming out on the most popular records. Really copying Boy Jarvis. That was really it. I mean, that was my guy. He was trying to copy what he was doing. And through trying to copy, we learned how to create our own style.
Mhm.
So it started out in a 4-track studio called 4 Bits Recording in East Orange. As I became an engineer, I learned more about production and things of that nature. And then Josh was always, man, he's a phenomenal musician. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's nowhere near the musician he was when he was 16, 17, 18. Like now, I think he's lazy. Now,
I say, if you
back
saw
then,
Josh play back in the day in church, forget it.
yeah, he was.
Such a difference.
It was another, I don't know, atmosphere he was coming,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and just really an amazing talent. But when we first started working together, he didn't know anything about dance music or house music or club
Right.
music. So the first record that we obviously started copying was Boy. But in order for him to demo, to show me that he could play, he played Love Is the Message.
Mm.
And he had the bass on the left hand and the chords on the right.
Mhm.
And he played the whole Love Is the Message just to show me and prove to me that he could play that kind of music.
Wow.
He was 16 years old.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a prodigy almost here at that level.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Kev, a lot of people, producers today, don't understand the process. I mean, before you even begin the recording process, there's a process in itself, like striping the tape. And striping the tape sometimes can take 30 minutes. And once you get the production going, because you mentioned 4-track, to get more tracks, you had a ping pong or bounce it over, take 4 tracks, put into one, and then use the other track to get 16 tracks all together on a cassette.
That's for sure. You know, well, they don't have to stripe tape now.
Nah.
They don't use empty code anymore, you know. But
Yeah.
back then, if you striped the tape, one Simpty track, then you only had 3 tracks.
Right.
So, and that's really was a blessing in disguise because it taught us how to make records sound like full records with a small amount of tracks. So, you know, as learning how to create the beat, record the beat in stereo, and then you'd have one track for the bass, another track for the keyboards, and then I would use different things to make it come out in stereo, like studio effects. So that was really a blessing in disguise, learning how to produce full records with limited amount of space and ability on your recording device. So yeah, you're right. You no more striping the tape. Today, you guys have it easy.
You know, rest in power, Boy Jarvis. Before he passed, I asked him, because I know that, you know, he was very infamous for his sound, but that bass. And I asked him how he actually was able to, you know, achieve that type of bass, and he told me he ran it through a guitar effect. An electronic guitar effect with the amps, and that's how he got the bass sound that all of us were trying to figure out how he did it. But what was it about Boy Jarvis that inspired you?
It was, well, you know, being at the age we grew up in, my age, I'm 55 now, we grew up in the disco period. So really that electronic music of New York during that time, West End, Prelude, South Soul, was the music that inspired us. And Boy's music was different from the music that was coming out on West End. It was electronic. So what inspired me is that I didn't need to know how to play bass. I didn't need to know how to play keyboards. I could start with programming a beat, and then I could sit down with Josh and come up with the bass line or the keyboard or the chord structure. And really, what learning from those records taught us to write songs. See, I came up in a time when you had to write a song to make a record.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, guys just take another record and make a record. But back then, there was none of that.
Ouch.
You had to
Uh-oh.
really know how to begin.
Go ahead.
And there's nothing wrong with, like, I'm a fan of technology. I think it allows us to explore and more artistic value to come out. But at some point, I don't like the fact that they don't learn. I guess what it is the craft. They don't learn the craft as well as what we had to learn the craft. You know,
We
and
talked
you
about
don't
that
know
just
it.
yesterday. Mhm.
You don't know you're learning the craft, but all of that work that goes into putting that together is the craft. Like guys today, like new producers, friends of mine, they don't do separate drums. Like there's no kick drum track, hi-hat track, snare track. It's all a loop. And then they just play the bass line. They loop the loop through for 3 minutes and they play the bass line. And he gives me the record. I want you to mix it. I'm like, well, where's the snare? Oh, it's all on one track.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not making a record. But they're doing it and it's successful for them.
Kevin, DJ Pope had a question. It looks like he's saying how to write a song.
Oh, that's my brother, DJ Pope.
Yeah.
He knows how to write a song. Come
Yes, he does. Stop playing for.
on. Yeah.
Or maybe it's a statement, but how do you write a song, or how do you attack it? Do you start with a hook, a melody first? Like how does that
You know
formulate?
what you always say? I start by just putting my antenna up. And first, I'll have a concept like maybe Josh and I'll sit down and he's playing certain chords. And I just put the antenna up and I'm asking the creator, what do you want me to say? I think of us as a terminal. Like the messages that come through in our songs and our music was messages that the creator wanted to get to the world. And we just happen to be the terminal through which they pass. So
That's funny.
I just put the antenna up and say, what do you want me to talk about? Now, certain songs are specific. Like Louie wanted me to write a song for his son. And the concept of that was that the regeneration of life, a circle thing. So when the sun goes down, after the night, the sun comes up. It's a brand new day. So that's the concept of that particular song, Brand New Day. But if we can't go through all the songs, but that was a specific meaning. I was trying to write a song for Nico, his son, and how at the end of the path, a new day begins. Like Louie's path is he's a father, and then his life will continue in his son. So that was the concept of that particular song. But I mean, what other song you want me to know? I don't write to a beat. I'm gonna tell you that. That's the secret. Will, a lot of guys they make a beat and they play a beat and they let the songwriter write over that beat. What we had learned is that we don't write to 120 beats per minute or whatever the beats per minute. I write the song freestyle. I might sit at the keyboard and block chord, and it might be a ballad. I might be writing a ballad because I figured out that's the best way to get the concept and the story across. And then we'll produce it the way we want to produce it, and we mostly produce dance records. But when I write, I don't write to the beat or to the track. I don't even listen to the track. I just come up with the concept and, like I said, put my antenna up and see what God wants me to say.
And and that's a songwriting process. You got to get into the songwriting field, because what happens is when you write to a beat, you're locked into that rhythm.
Exactly.
Whereas when you have chord progressions, or you it gives you more freedom with the melodies. You're able to you have more of a free flow. So you're right.
Well, you can finish the thought. a lot of times when you're writing that 120, you're trying to finish the thought in that short amount of beats. But when you just write freeform, and you'll learn, and I'm sure Pope knows this, any ballad is a dance record. If you write a ballad at 62 beats per minute, that's transformed to 124. There you go. So I learned to write as a ballad writer to write songs because you can get the whole thought process out as opposed to trying to finish it before 8 bars. And that's really it. I loved writing songs. I mean, that was one of my biggest passions to sit down in this studio, in fact, with nothing on. It'll be just me and a candle. And I might have the keyboard on where I'm block chording the chords that we're writing to. And those chords are telling me the mood and what we're supposed to be saying.
Right.
It's just God, man. That's all.
Yeah. So it sounds like your major role with being part of Blaze was the production, the songwriting. Were the other responsibilities? I mean, of course, the engineering, but any other positions or responsibilities you had?
When we first started, it was just myself, Josh, and Chris. Now, mind you, he was 16, so that means I was 18. And what you learn is that at that age, when you get into this business, you're going into business with men and women who are professionals at business. So that was a big part of it. I mean, because I was basically the loudest mouth, I had to learn the business of it, learning how to read a contract, learning how to. So that was kind of my overall role in the group, is to handle all of the business affairs, as well as being in the studio, and as well as just loving my brothers. You know, like, that's the thing. Josh and I wasn't a production team. That's my brother. Like, I can't even explain to you. Like, almost brings tears to my eyes. That is a guy who I love Josh as much as I love my son today. Like, I used to think about him and any decision I was going to make before I would make the decision to think about how's it going to affect Josh. Over the years, I've been offered A&R deals and coming to work at record companies. And I always thought, if I go work at this record company, what's going to happen with him? We wouldn't be able to work as much because I would be having a job. Now, mind you, when Warner Brothers calls you and say, we got a $120,000 job for you, you can come do this. Peter Edge, in fact, he'll tell you, he tried to get me to work for him for 4 years. He thought that I understood how to sign and do records. And it wasn't until we got to an opportunity, which is a whole nother story, to get West End, that I decided to become a music business kind of executive guy. But I always thought of him. And so we didn't, you know, Will, it's interesting. We didn't come to the studio and say, okay, we writing this song today. Josh and I would spend all day playing each other music. He's playing me music that he loved. I'm playing him music that I love. And we just vibing, just playing music for each other in this room. And we wouldn't, it would seem like we wouldn't get any work done. But from that session of just being together, that would be a new song some other day. And he can finish my thoughts. I can finish his thoughts.
That's real.
So, that's how close we were. We lived together for 20 years. You know,
when did you start working with him?
When did I start working with him?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, hold on. Wait. Let's get there. Hold that thought. Let's build up to that.
Oh,
let's build up to that.
Look at you, Oprah.
Oh my God.
Go ahead.
Kev, so I salute and commend you for the love that you have for Josh Milan. I mean, I always feel like you have to be family and friends first, you know, because that's what goes into the recording. That's what goes into the process of the just everything, the vibe. Like, you know, I tell artists a lot of times when they say, look, let's do the session remote. I'm like, you're missing out a lot if you do it remote. Come in the session. I'm in the control room. You're in the booth.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's that vibe, that collaboration that you don't get remote virtually, you know.
Organic.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
definitely a difference.
We are sentient beings, that spirits, really. So Blaze can never be Kevin Hedge. It can never be Josh Milan. It was both of us together that created a new entity called Blaze. So you needed both of those spirits in the room. And then I had people ask me, well, Kev, you know, I got a partner and it seemed like I'm doing all the work. I'm doing 90% of the work and he only showed up for 10%. And I said, but you still need 100% to be successful. So if I had to do 90 and Josh only did 10, or if Josh had to do 90 and only did 10, you still needed the whole thing to be successful. So it's what you want to do. I don't mind putting in the effort, doing all of the work. And my artist partner or the partners that I work with, they don't just do their part. That's it. I need their part to make this part successful. So that's really what it is. So Josh and I started maybe in 82, 83. We started vibing together. He came to my house as a kid. In my room, I had a DJ set up, and we plugged his keyboard into the mixer, and we played Mix Your Own Stars, that beat. And then we recorded him playing keyboards over that beat to a cassette, right? And then we took the cassette, put it in another cassette, and bounced it back through the mix, and he played the chords over it. So you're right. That's how you start. That's how we got started.
Man, I would have loved to see God rest his soul, David Cole and Josh Milan playing side by side together.
Well, you know, it was the same thing, man. You know, those guys have a kindred spirit where they speak a language. Even if I'm with Josh every day, him and David Cole are speaking a language that I can't talk. I can't speak. You know, they understand that process, keyboard playing, at a level where I could never even think of. So they were, you know, when they would see each other, it was all love. They wouldn't even talk about playing. They would talk about, you know, the latest keyboard or what's going on. Or, you know, both of them was very spiritual in the church. They would talk about that more than they would talk about recording music. So that was another thing.
What was your favorite gear that you love using? You mentioned the Linn drum. Was it a LM1 or the actual Linn drum?
See, you know, I was with Danny Crivet. This is when the new music seminar was still at the Marriott, Milton. Somebody asked me this question: what is your favorite gear? I said, my favorite thing to use when I'm in the studio, I want to work with my partner. That's it. Josh was my favorite instrument to work with.
That's love.
He could do anything. Like, I may be making it up more than what it was, but I've seen the guy play drums on the keyboard for 5 minutes, and it was locked. The timing was locked. So if I had an instrument or something to use, I mean, we grew up on the MPC 60. That was my original production machine. Well, Linn drum, but the MPC 60, that was God. Do you remember that? That was God.
Yeah.
And we worked hard to get that MPC 60. And so I would say if I had to go back, I still have an MPC 2000. Well, not even 2000. I have an MPC X now. So I'm still an MPC guy. Okay. So that's my favorite thing. And I'm a Pro Tools guy. I know all you guys use Logic and all this new stuff.
I still use Digital Performer, which was the original, you know,
Pro Tools
one of the first MIDI.
Pro Tools was first. It was Pro Tools was
debatable.
Pro Tools originally was a 2-track editing system because the technology that where you didn't have enough memory to do 24 tracks, so you could do stereo edits. I forgot what they call the company. I mean the actual program, but we used to do edits with a computer,
Mhm.
and then that same company then started making it 8-track, 16-track, now 200 tracks.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
I like to think of that as being first.
Kev, during the time you mentioned, like the early 80s into the mid 80s, there were so many groups. You had Visual, you had 10 City, Fingers Inc. What made Blaze different than those other groups that I, just mentioned?
Well, that's something that bothers me. It seemed like ever since I've started recording as a artist, producer, there was always somebody better than me. So you mentioned 10 City. When we were Blaze, 10 City we had a bigger record than us. But before 10 City, we were Blaze. We had a hit record on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
Touch had the biggest record ever, Without You.
Mm-hmm.
So it always seemed like somebody was better. If we were Blaze, we were mixing and producing. Marshall Jefferson was the guy,
Mhm.
and we were always seemed second. So what set us off different? I don't know. I think it was just the thing about recording. You can't say what's the difference between Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye. They're two their own things. They were their own things.
Mhm.
So I think Blaze was its own thing. 10 City was his own thing. Fingers Incorporated was his own thing. That was the versatility in the musical palette that we grew up to.
Mhm.
Earth, Wind, and Fire didn't sound like Marvin Gaye,
Mhm.
but we loved them equally.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's what it is. It wasn't what set us apart. No, I just think we was our own thing.
How come Blaze never won a Grammy?
It was never an ambition of mine. And I'm not very good at networking. Like this is my first interview in over 20 years.
Mhm.
I'm not very good at networking and shaking hands, and I don't drink, I don't smoke. So I'm not really a good, to win a Grammy, you have to be good, but it's also a lot of handshaking and politicking and getting everybody to know who you are and things like. And some people have people that do that for them. But I always say I never had anybody or was even interested in having anybody do that. I never wanted to win a Grammy as a remixer. That's probably never was my ambition. I wanted to win a Grammy as a songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
That's really when you win. You're a songwriter. You wrote the number one song of the year. How
Mhm.
about that?
Yeah.
How about that? You wrote the song that touched millions of people's lives.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to win a Grammy at. So I never, just something we never thought about. We've
Mhm.
been to the Grammys. I was nominated for a Grammy as an engineer
Mm-hmm.
when I
Nice.
engineered Earth. I engineered Third World's last album on Columbia Records. I was the recording engineer, and
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
they nominated me for a Grammy in recording. But I was 19. I wasn't thinking I was, I wasn't thinking. I was just excited to be next to Quincy Jones.
Mhm.
So that was it. I wasn't thinking I'm going to win.
Yeah.
Um, and that we just never had an emphasis on winning a Grammy. What excites me is you remember this well. Maybe some of you do is when Underground Archives, Donna, what was her
Donna,
name?
um, not Donna Edwards, Donna Ward.
When she used to do that, that is exciting to me because that was my peers,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
people had to go on and vote. And look at her use of the technology 20 something years ago
Yeah.
that you had to go and vote on what you thought was the best.
Right.
So when our community would vote for a record I did or a event I created, or a label I worked for, when they would, I got a few of them. I don't have them here. Wait, I did have it here. I don't know where it is.
Mhm.
That meant more to me at that time than a Grammy. Because a Grammy don't mean you're gonna make money. A Grammy just means that some people thought you were the best, and to be the best, I wasn't gonna be around the people that I needed to be around to have them think that, oh man, Kevin's great. So that's it. I'm not great at those networking things.
Understood. Kevin, under Blaze, what were some of the recording artists that you have worked with?
Oh, come on, Will. I can't remember, man. Like, there's so many people that blessed us with their talent to work with us. You want me to think of somebody in particular? I mean,
I remember Lisa
lot.
Stansfield.
Yeah, a lot. My favorite that I work with, Stephanie Cook was my favorite.
Oh, nice.
Stephanie Cook.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because she was a phenomenal songwriter. And she
is.
came from the era of, Faith Evans, and she could write those songs over our musical beats. She could write R&B songs over that. And so she was kind of my favorite because she wasn't a belter. She was a song stylist. And that's, I really appreciate it.
That's a very good depiction.
Like a Janet Jackson, she can get her point across without, going up into the rafters. Like she's able to, execute those notes and she knows how to like finesse them to make it sound really pretty.
I mean, yeah. And there's a lot of producing that goes into producing a Janet Jackson as well. I mean, I hate to be honest, but what was the record we did? Casio.
Baby Love?
No.
So in Love? Lose
It was
Booty in the
with a girl.
Backroom?
He brought a girl here to sing.
Oh, with Sajada,
All right,
Fantasy.
so that's a perfect. Get her to sing for you.
I've been trying to get her to sing.
Okay. All right. So what I'm saying to you is that's a production more than actually her just knocking it out. That's hours of tweaking and just trying to write something that she could execute. So you can have people like Janet Jackson. I think, obviously she's phenomenal at what she does, but without Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, wasn't no hits. Wasn't Janet that we know. She couldn't even get a record deal. Think about that.
Yeah, because the album she did with when Renee and Angela produced that first Janet album is nowhere near the Pleasure Principle album with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis.
So look at and see, in a way, that's that's one of the things I regret now. Today, I would think me and Josh is the Jam and Lewis of this music. So, but it's the magic of what they did with her in the studio and how they made her comfortable enough to sing those songs, to perform those songs over her just going in knocking it out.
Yeah.
Like Whitney, when we was around Whitney, she came in. A lot of people don't know that we had a chance to remix a Whitney song. It never came out. But
she came into the studio?
Yeah. Not this studio, but a real, bigger studio in New York.
Yeah.
And dude, she listened one time and went in and knocked it out. I was like, because we was recreating one of her records, so she had to sing it to our beat, to make it fit right. So that she was like, that's next level. And come in and smoking and drinking and one take. Kenny Bobian is like that. He can one take. Like you give him the lyrics, you hear the melody, you go in the studio, the record's done. That's how talented he is.
Colonel Abram was like that. I remember one time I was in a session with Smack and we were working on the Who Do You Love? And I remember the engineer was like, we got to get him now because he's a first taker. Anything after that, like if he's constantly in the studio, you'll lose him. So we had to get him right there. So you have artists that are like that. You have to get them right on the spot.
Well, they give it all that first time.
You got to comp the vocals. You got to just get them
right. Well, they give so much that first time of singing it. The thing what I liked about working with Stephanie is I could sit here with her, and I could say to her, take for instance, Love Will. I could say to her, I'll need you to go back to the argument that you had with your husband and boyfriend. What did you feel? Like, what pissed you off? We would talk about those kind of things when we make a record. And then I would want you to feel the love that you had that made you stay when you first met her. And so when you listen to Love Will, that's what she's singing. She's singing, we got to make it through this. Love will find a way. Let's work on it. So that's an interesting, like, I don't know, like, house music producers don't think at that kind of concept of, I'm trying to affect you ladies. So when y'all hear this song, it'll take you to your relationships too. And think of how that song speaks to your life. That's what we try to do.
So with Love Will, did Josh Milan demo the song for Stephanie? Did you sing it to her? Like, how did?
No, she did it herself. We sat here in the studio. I can't go through the whole story because personal to her, but we sat here in the studio. It was a trying time for her and her relationship, and we maybe talked for like 3 hours. We kind of hung out, and then I'm messing around with chords, and Josh comes in and he starts this groove, and then she goes, I don't know what to say. That was the beginning. I don't know what to say. And that was it. She knew the song from then on. Wow. It took her like 5 minutes to write that. Wow. But it was the conversation of, how did you feel? What happened? Like, because when you work with artists sometimes, they people. So it's personal. And you have to kind of search for that comfort, common space. Because when you work in the studio, you have to be comfortable with being corny too. With coming up with bad ideas. And you have to be comfortable with them knowing that was a bad idea. So you have to kind of get to that point where you don't mind throwing out your bad ideas. So that's what me and Stephanie had got to as songwriting.
I think the greatest moments is when everyone from the producer to the songwriter to the vocalist performing to the engineer all becoming very vulnerable so that we can get that on a take without any hindrance.
That's the perfect way to explain it. You have to be vulnerable when you're recording in the studio. But now here's the thing. This is the blessed side of myself and Josh, is that the songwriter was us, the engineer was us, the musicians was us, and a lot of times the artist was us. And even with Stephanie, Stephanie could have been a part of Blaze Easy. She had the thing. We have a lot of more music on her that we never released. Like tapes of music with her that never came out. That are just things that we did for the moment.
Yeah.
And then songs she wrote for other people that we did. Because we like a production team too with her.
Yeah, because you were like a machine, because some production companies would have to hire a songwriter just to come into that session, whereas you all had everything right there, all within the box, And I think also, I always say it's important to have that producer artist relationship. Like the producer's got to be able to identify what their strengths and weaknesses are, because not every recording artist can write, but they're an awesome singer. But you got to be able to say, hey, let us work on the writing process with you.
This is true.
I think I read somewhere, I think the Barbara Tucker project, the Most Precious Love, I think
I rewrote the song in a van in Japan. We had the song finished. She did a whole nother song, and I just knew it wasn't the right song. But through conversations with Barbara and her evangelizing the things that she, Barbara can go there with the evangelistic stuff, and just having those conversations. And what she would talk about is the love of yourself. And that's the most precious love, to love yourself.
Yep.
So that's how I wrote that song. Come all together with.
All right.
Yep.
Kevin, if I can go back a little bit to the Lisa Stanfield's track, the People Hold On, because I feel like that track is so timeless. Now I remember, I mean, today, you can use the computer to beat map, but back then we had to use key spans where we would have to break up the vocal and rewrite the vocals on a keyboard to make it fit. And sometimes we had to do that because it's either they would have to come back into the recording studio to do the track over, but if you didn't have the budget, you had to make it work by replaying it, breaking it up.
Right.
Tell us about the Lisa Stansfield, People Hold On. What was that remix like? Did she go into the studio? Did you like?
Well, no, actually what happened was we were already in London. It was our first trip to London, 1987, 88. And when we got there, all the record companies were calling we did like about 10 remixes, 20 remixes. Well, I can't remember. It was a lot of remixes. Mm-hmm. And that band, it was a band. Cold Cut. They were like Blaze fans. And they brought us this song because you remember, we were reaching in all these world peace songs. So they felt like that song was a world peace song. And they wanted us to do Blaze on it. And we didn't hear it as gospel. That's really what they wanted, like that reaching kind of gospel-y thing. Again, Josh is this amazing. He heard the chords more jazz. Mm. So as we're listening to the vocal, now we only had the acapella. We're listening to the vocal, doing exactly what you said. We had to, the song was at a different tempo. So again, we learned to write without a beat. So Josh is sitting there playing the chords like under her vocal, which is different. And now you had to be a church musician to do this. Right. Because somebody will start singing and he's got a chord behind him. And there's no tempo, there's no melody. He's figuring it out as he goes. And so when he started doing that, he came up with those chords. And I was like, wow, those chords are dope. So now you turn the drum machine on and you start the percussion, that beat. But we wanted something, we didn't want the open hi-hat swing. We wanted something that was different, like, and we put the beat behind it. It was just beats and chords at first. Now, this is going back to what you were saying. This is what I think the magic of me and Josh was. Mm-hmm. It was only us two. You listen to that record, it sounds like a band's playing it. Yeah. Listen to it. It sounds like a band. That's how phenomenal he could think in parts. He could be the bass player. He could be the guitar player. He could be the keyboardist. He could play the piano. He could be the flute. He could play all those parts individually, but together like a band.
Wow.
So that was the concept of that particular remix. And I'm proud of that. Obviously, I'm proud of that remix.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It sounds like you used the Yamaha DX7 for that production because of that bass.
Well, the DX7 was everything back then. That was the keyboard back then. Yeah. That was the keyboard. That was the bass with the slap bass sound.
Yeah.
And and that had the Rhodes sound.
Yeah. The EP1. Kevin, you mentioned something very important with the hi-hats, and it's something that I noticed. You would use the Roland TR-909, but you would never use the open hat, the signature hats for your productions. I always wanted to ask you, how come you would never use the open hats?
I mean, to be honest with you, I can't say if that was a obvious thought to not use it. It didn't fit the sound that I wanted to hear. See, a lot of times we would record together and we would have everything in the sequencer, and then maybe Josh would leave, and then I would change all of the sounds in the production. Like I might use a different kick drum, a different snare, a different hi-hat. So sometimes he would start it with whatever he heard as the sounds, and maybe I would come in and change all of the different sounds. Because when you had sequencer, you could take the keyboard and change the sounds. So that would take me maybe 5 or 6 hours just to get the right sounds to make the record bang, so to speak. So that was it, man. I think my first love is being a mix engineer. I think I love that more than all of it. Yeah. The best place for me is sitting in this chair behind this studio, mixing somebody's record just to make it sound amazing. So that was it. I like sound. I wanted the songs to sound great. And with those roller machines, they sounded great for the time. But as we started to develop, like I said, we go back to the MPC 60, you can use different hi-hats from different things. True, I would take a hi-hat from a South Soul record and edit it up, trim it down, and just use parts of it to make it be what we want it to be.
So Chris Hubert leaves Blaze. How come he left?
He wanted to do something different. His brother was moving into the R&B realm and was having some success over there. His brother actually produced Christopher Williams and Tony Braxton, wound up marrying Tamar Braxton. And so he I loved this music, but he didn't want to become a singer to be a house music singer. He wanted to sing. So R&B is more attractive. You don't get Rolls Royces doing house music.
All right. So now we start to see, Chris leaves, Blaze is in, but now we're starting to see, different names under Blaze. We start to see Alexander Hope, and the question that Pope had, how did the concept of Alexander Hope came about, and who was Alexander Hope?
Well, Alexander Hope was a special dude. He showed up at a time when we didn't want to keep making records under Blaze, and Josh would sing the demos, and the demos would be better or we just couldn't find somebody to sing those records. Or Josh was great. He would allow me to produce his vocal. And I always loved him singing more in a baritone. Like he's more tenor now, but I like when he's down here. And so that was Alexander. Let the music take you there. All of that was that sound. We were trying to copy Colonel Abrams, I guess. And he would sing it, and we didn't have an artist. And in order to get a deal for the record, you need names. So Josh's middle name is Alexander. And at that time, like I said, this is my brother. We grew up together, basically. We would play, and there was a young lady who came to the studio that we used to tease. Her name was Hope. So the name came up, Alexander Hope. They just thought of it was a good name. And a lot of people don't remember what Josh looked like at that. He was real thin with the dreads. So he just had that feel. It sounded like a good name. And we just put it on there so we wouldn't be another Blaze record. Because Blaze was a specific thing. Other than the sound we're going to do with him.
So it's safe to say that Alexander Hope is Josh Milan?
That's Josh Milan, yes.
Okay.
Because it sounded like during that time you were reaching for like a Charlie Wilson, an Aaron Hall, because it had that vibe, even like an Alexander O'Neill.
Well, I think Josh more is into Felipe Wynn, if you know who that is.
Okay. Yeah.
That's really more of his inspiration. Donny Hathaway and Felipe Wynn. Felipe
Yeah.
Wynn for more dance records. That's his inspiration, really. If I can remember those times, he would always refer to Felipe Wynn. He was so phenomenal at his ad libs. Josh really admired that. I guess also Teddy Pendergrass. So if you listen to a lot of those Alexander Holt records, they have that Teddy Pendergrass, Felipe Wynn kind of musical styling going. I mean, singing style.
Gotcha. So that's Blaze.
Oh, come on, man.
Great, Will.
Come on, man.
He's gonna do this.
Nice.
Yeah,
Come on, man.
love it. I love it.
So
Chris
special.
Hubert. You got Kevin Hedge, Josh Milan there. So now this is Motown, right?
That's
Mhm.
Motown Records. Yes.
Okay. How did that come about? Like, how did you score a deal with Motown? I mean, you go from Quark to a major label, and I'm sure that the marketing, the package is totally different. But what was it like being signed to Motown?
Oh man, it was phenomenal. It was how it all came about was, again, I looked up to Timmy Regisford. Obviously he was. If you think about it, I was Timmy, Josh was Boyd, so we were copying that kind of thing. I was already a DJ before I even met Josh. I was into DJing. So Timmy was somebody that I kind of looked up to as far as the success he was having with making records and doing everything. In any event, when we made What You Gonna Do for Love, this is God, like I said, the universe. Timmy he knew Abigail Adams. He called Abigail to say, hey, who are these guys coming out of New Jersey? Because he knew Abby was in Jersey. Who are these guys coming out of Jersey Blaze? She said, oh my God, he works for me. And so she introduced me to Timmy. And then y'all have to understand that that's another relationship that's beyond the business. Like Timmy became like my big brother shown up. Like we lived life together. And what I mean by that is we traveled. He took me around the world with him. He was working A&R for Motown at the time. He signed the Blaze record. We had two deals going at the same time. We were going to sign with Warner Brothers with Benny Medina, but Timmy was like, no, I want you to come with me because he was like my big brother. And naturally, we going with my big brother. And so that's how we got to Motown, through Timmy. Timmy was really kind of groundbreaking as he was coming up as a DJ, producer, music guy. You didn't know what A&R was before Timmy got the A&R job at Atlantic. And so that was kind of groundbreaking to have a guy go from being a DJ to now picking records that major labels were going to release. That was, to give him he kind of changed the game with that. And so naturally, because he knew of us, he liked our music, he wanted to support the music that he loves. Merlin had already signed 10 City, so next was Blaze. And then him and I was like brothers, like literally brothers. Him and I were like best friends, brothers. So we went there, and again, the rest is history. But that's how we got to Motown.
So Timmy Regisford, is he now at that time? He's A&R, or he's executive.
He was A&R.
So he was directing you. He was kind of like molding Blaze more into the.
Not necessarily like that. He worked for the record company, choosing records that the record company would sign. MCA, Motown. Now again, you got to understand, us growing up together with Timmy, he called Abby. I came to a meeting to meet the Timmy. I was nervous as hell. I'm going to meet one of my, guys. And I go to his office. He's working at MCA. They have an office on Park Avenue. First thing I noticed is that he was left-handed because he was writing. And I'm like, how the hell is he? And I realized he's left-handed. How does he write? Because, I'm right-handed. So I'm like, how are you writing with a different hand? And anyway, we talked. he had us to remix some stuff on MCA. Came out on the Shades, Colors of Shades record.
Colors of Shades, yeah.
You know that album.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first major label work that we ever did. Came through Timmy. And then we just developed that relationship as big brother, little brother over the years. Just having dreams together. Thinking of the world together. And I came along at a time when New York was popping for music. You know, Teddy Riley we were friends with him. Like we all knew each other. So that whole thing was going, but house music was on a different trajectory. And in Europe, the plan was to have house music become big. So record labels thought, well, let's get a house music artist. Mm-hmm. And like I said, Merlin had already signed 10 City to Atlantic. So what was next? Blaze. And Timmy brought us there more out of the fact that we were brothers than anything else. But he would let me go in the studio. We did anything we wanted. He never gave us any direction on, I want you to do a song like this. He was just like, whatever. Again, before that, Josh and I was the production team for Timmy Regisford's remixes. When he needed to do a remix and he needed overdubs, he was calling me and Josh to do the overdubs.
Right.
So he already was familiar with our production style.
Gotcha.
So it's just a matter of saying, yo, go do what you do, man. Here's a certain amount of money, more money than I ever seen in my life. Go do what you do. And that's what we did.
So now it seems like the building relationship between you and Timmy Regisford, and I guess, Marilyn Bob, even though he was over at Atlantic, you and Timmy decide to join hands and you start Shelter. You come out of you're in the production team, you're in the production realm, but now you're deciding to begin marketing club events.
Well,
can you talk about
again, we were brothers.
Mm-hmm.
His dreams were my dreams too, because I looked up to him as well. So the thing that bothered, I think, Tim and me, Larry Levan died with nothing. He didn't have enough money to pay for his funeral. Imagine that.
Wow.
He's the god of New York.
Mm-hmm.
God. He's literally still today God.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, he was a rock star.
That's right.
And the guy couldn't pay for his funeral. I think Timmy learned from that. If I'm going to spin at the club, I'm going to own it. Because Michael Brody, we don't know what happened to the garage after Michael Brody died. His family inherited it, so it went to them. And whatever revenue or whatever happened, we don't know. But you can't think of the Paradise Garage without thinking of Larry Levan.
That's right.
And he didn't have anything. Unfortunately, the guy he wasn't thinking like that with business. And nobody was at that time. But Tim also understood that if that was the path he wanted to follow, seeing that, he knew he wanted to own the club. So then that became our kind of mantra. Like, if we're going to open a club that Timmy's going to be the DJ, we need to own it. And, working in the studio, all that information that came up with the Shelter came out of us being in the studio together. Even the name came out of us being in the studio together, just Timmy and I just having conversation. And the guy who owned a recording studio, his name was Charles Benanti. He owned the studio called Soundworks. It was in the same building as Studio 54. Timmy and him became friends because Timmy was giving him so much business. They became friends. And then Charlie was the guy who knew how to make investments and get money and do all the things. And he was one of my business mentors. So when him and Timmy was talking, Charlie had the idea of owning the club, but he wanted to do more where we create this intellectual property, meaning like the story he told me was that Dick Clark made more money off the videos from American Bandstand than he did from American Bandstand. And that's forever because Dick Clark had a video of Madonna when she first came out. Anytime somebody wanted to use that, they had to pay Dick Clark. So Charlie's concept was we would invite all these artists and we would do the club, and then we would record these performances, and then we would own those copyrights. And that's kind of why Charlie wanted to invest in a nightclub. And because he loved Timmy, he was willing to back whatever Timmy wanted to do. And then I came in my little parts, and I was like Timmy's running guy. Whatever Timmy needed, I was gonna do it. And we loved each other. That's really how that got started. We loved each other. It wasn't no money ever asked for, exchange or anything. It's just, this is what we doing. Let's go do it. And that's what happened. It just, again, the universe conspiring for us to achieve it.
It's interesting because as we speak, they have a shelter party happening now. I remember back in '91 when Shelter first started. I remember we were going to Wild Pitch. We were going there, and then shout outs to Greg Day, and we heard like Shelter is a whole new club that's opening up, and we were like true followers of Wild Pitch,
right?
And then we started going to the Shelter, and it's like when you walk through them doors, you get this feeling. Like you haven't even hit the dance floor yet, but there's a feeling that you get, a vibe. You know what I'm saying? And then when you finally get to the dance floor, the sound system, and I believe David Soto did the sound system at that time. You saw power amps. And the last time I saw a setup like that was at the Roxy, when you had you had the crown amps on each corner.
Right.
The sound system, and it's like it had that feeling like, was that intentional? Like were you trying to recreate something?
I think David can speak to the technology part better than I can, but I think the concept was the shorter the line, the run was from the amp, from the source to the speaker, the better the sound would be. So the concept was put the amps right next to the speaker stack because you would have a less run. What I mean by run is speaker wire cable.
Travel time.
Right, would not have to travel as far. So that was the concept. And we had the 4 stacks, and then you put the amps for the stacks next to it. And that's how it became a problem, really. It was really not a smart idea, but it was the concept at the time. Why it wasn't a smart idea? Because all of you guys, you club guys, want to bring baby powder. And the baby powder would get in the amps. And then the amps would overheat, and then it was Kevin's job to climb up on the ladder and after every party and blow the baby powder out of the amps so you wouldn't destroy the sound system.
Gotcha.
That was the concept of it.
This is just my opinion, Kevin. I feel like if it wasn't for you and Timmy, I don't think Body and Soul, the Danny Teneglia, the NASA parties.
I don't want to even go into the politics of what I feel about it.
All right. I just feel like it would have been different because that place is there. I mean, of course, Areas was there, but I just think you set the ground.
If it wasn't for Larry going there when it was Area, we wouldn't have known about the space. See, Larry used to do a Sunday at Area. Now I'm going way back. Larry Levan used to do a Sunday party at Area. A Sunday tea party, they called it. And that's what brought us to that space when it was Area. Now, I do believe in spirits, obviously. And I believe that certain rooms have certain energy. That particular room, that shelter area room, was born to be a club. The energy was there. When you walked in there, like you said, you felt like you're at home. you felt comfortable. You know what that real building used to be? That was the holding pen for American Express horses. That's why it was built the way it was built, because they used to that's where they used to keep the horses for American Express deliveries. Now, obviously, we're going back into the early 1900s. But if you look on the building, probably not now, but if you look over the door, there was the head of the American Express man.
That's right.
Right.
That's true.
That used to be the American Express building. And that building just had club energy because it was a club before it was area. Then it was area. We knew about it. And the club, and Andy Warhol kind of worked closely with area because he designed it. So the energy was there. When we came in, it was just our dream. We didn't think of it. But that's why the room is always so successful, because area. I mean, the energy was there. And not every room can do that. You know, you've been to clubs where it just didn't feel comfortable, and it could be your favorite DJ.
Yeah,
that's
and
right.
It's just like, it's just not here.
Yeah.
And then you'll go to a room, and it's not your favorite DJ, but everybody's loving it.
Yeah.
It's just the
You know,
energy.
what I think, you know, what I always thought was cool about Shelter is like a lot of people didn't even know they were actually talking to Kevin Hedge or Blaze, or didn't know the first person you saw was Chris Hubert, who took the money. You know what I'm saying? They didn't realize that Blaze is still in there, but it's a whole different persona. Like Chris actually came back into the house scene, even though he wanted to do something different. But how come you left Shelter?
Oh. Well, I think what had happened, it was a lot of, like, people don't realize, and this is my argument with people today. When you're playing at a level of professional, it's a different game than having a room and going to Guitar Center or Sam Ash and buying a sound system. So Charlie had left us. So by the time we were ready to start Shelter again, we worked at when it was called Vinyl. Then when Vinyl was over, we were supposed to be kicked out of Vinyl the weekend after 9/11.
Wow.
So the last party was going to be on the weekend after 9/11.
Okay.
And again, I think about spirit. When 9/11 happened, it shut that whole area down.
Right.
That made me feel like God was saying it's not supposed to be over, because we never got a chance to do the last party. And so that put me on a mission to get it going again. Then, and I'm gonna really be honest with you, when it opened back up as Vinyl, part of my annoyance was that the people who were doing the party on Sunday knew that space was Shelter before it was Vinyl. And they started doing a party on Sundays that was very kind of built on the same vibe as Shelter parties were built on. And they would go get Timmy Regisford inspired DJs to play with them on a Sunday, but they would never ask Timmy to come play. And that pissed me off. So I collected all my little pennies and said, we're going to do our own. I felt like at that time, because he was my big brother and I loved him, nobody going to play him low. And if I could do something to put him back in the position that he needed to be in, if it's just money, that's nothing. We're very blessed.
Right.
So that was one of the reasons that made me want to do Shelter again, because I loved him. Then what made me leave the club is because it was a hell of a lot of stress, man. I lost the. That's why I wear these glasses, because my left eye lost eyesight in it. Because you're not just dealing with the people coming through the door. I'm dealing with the city. I'm dealing with the electrician, the fire department, the police. I mean, it's so much. Running a club is not what it looked like. It's a lot more to the foundation. Just the fact that they told me that I had to get a 20-ton air conditioner to service that floor that we had on 39th Street.
Speed, Club Speed.
Yeah. Then we had to lie to the city and get a crane to come at 4 a.m. just to lift the air conditioner up to the roof. Then you had to hire people who do that kind of metal work to secure the roof. Like all of this just was way more money than I ever could imagine. Mm-hmm. So when you see a club, you just see the room. But when we moved into that building at Speed, we had to upgrade the complete electrical system. Wow. Just to do that was $16,000. Just to get the electricians to come and rewire the building to handle the sound system and the lights and the air conditioning.
Yeah, that was a phase-on system, right? That y'all put in.
Yes, that was the legendary Twilo phase-on system.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of stress, and so by the time a year went by, I don't know. Somehow, Timmy and I had a different opinion on the direction. What should we do? One of the discussions was Timmy wanted to raise the price, and I didn't think that we should raise the price. I didn't think we was at a level where the quality of what we were offering warranted raising the price. So went to a vote. Of course, the staff voted to vote the price. And then that started where me and Timmy wasn't communicating well anymore. Okay. And, in any relationship, you have to have the communication. And now, from him being the big brother to now it's Kevin running the business and spending most of the money. And maybe that made him feel uncomfortable, because when he used to tell me what I'm going to do, I'm the guy handling the dirty work. From I stuck my hands in toilets to clean it out. At the end of the night, y'all went home, but I had to bust garbage. Put it in the I had to make sure we would get fines if the garbage company didn't come pick up the garbage. So all of this had to be handled. And I think because of, the staff, they loved me. That's why we were successful, because the staff loved me. And they would do anything for Kevin. And I think maybe that might have made my brother feel some kind of way. Plus, I wasn't, like you said, I wasn't being a DJ. I could do it. And you come there, I would play sometime before Timmy got on, just to make up the time. And if Timmy wasn't going to be at the club, y'all wasn't coming. That means I had to make up the difference in the money, because I still got a staff to pay and rent to pay, but y'all wouldn't come if Timmy would. So I said, you know what? I'm not hiring another guest DJ. I could do that job. I just started doing it to fill in where Timmy wasn't. And then Timmy wouldn't show up till 3 a.m. So you had to have somebody to do it. That's how I really kind of started doing it. And I think, I don't know, I never talked to Timmy about this in any real way, but I remember the creative director of the club felt like they should start adding my name to the flyers as a DJ. And I don't think that was comfortable for Tim, because we never had another DJ on the flyer. Matter of fact, you can't really find no shelter flyers with my name on it. So, and that was my choice. I wanted to, I never wanted to be Derek Jeter. I wanted to be George Steinbrenner. That's the truth.
Baseball terms that I understand.
You understand what I'm saying? Like, Derek Jeter is retired.
Yes.
Hal Steinbrenner, George Steinbrenner's son, still owns the club.
That's right.
Wow.
He does.
I wanted to be the owner. I didn't really care about being a DJ. I wanted to be the guy who ran the business. That inspired me. I love business too, so that inspired me.
You mentioned the staff, the team. I feel like that's very important. You gotta
That's the
have
most
that.
important.
You gotta have the team. And I remember, it was you, Dino, Freddie Sannon, Mike.
That's
You
the
had
most
Black
important.
Symphony Orchestra. You know what I'm saying? Everyone that was part of that team that helped build Shelter for what it was. Because the DJing is one thing, but it's inside the core that really helps. And you
It's how you
always
feel
had
when
that
you walk
strong
through the
team.
door, how you're greeted
Yeah.
when you walk through the door.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it
Absolutely.
is.
Yep.
That was one of the arguments, not arguments, but one of the things that I'm trying to get Timmy to understand. Y'all didn't come just for the DJ. Like
Right.
nobody goes to the club to see Louie or Timmy. You go because you're gonna see your friends.
Mm-hmm.
And you
That's
want to hear the
really why
music.
you go.
And you want to hear good music.
But there's so many DJs that can do it. So which one you're gonna choose? You're gonna choose Will because Will's people that you like is gonna be there at Will's party too.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes you go. I'm gonna hear the music I want to hear, and I'm gonna see my good friends.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
So it's a social thing.
And before you get to the DJ booth, you got to get through the front, staff personnel. So if that chemistry is not tight, then some people may not even make it to the door. I mean, make it to the dance floor. Because like, I'm just turned off by this. I came here to release, not to come, get stressed out before I even get to the dance floor. So personnel is very important, who you have at the front.
Well, I'm sure all of you guys have ran parties before.
Oh, yes.
But running an event is different from running every week.
Mm-hmm.
Every week is a marathon, literally, because when you guys go home, that's when I start working.
Mm-hmm.
Like Shelter, we'd be there till 2 in the morning, till 2 the next day.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't get home until Tuesday some days because I gotta repair things. I gotta argue with people about payments. I gotta get nervous that I don't have enough money to pay my staff.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, all of that. Would I do it again? Yes.
Nice.
But I would do it with the knowledge that I know what to expect.
Okay.
And I only want to do it I wouldn't build a club that's anything less than what Cielo was. I wouldn't even be involved with it if it couldn't be at that level.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would do it again for sure.
Gotcha. So I mean, Shelter had some amazing talent come through that event venue. You had Sounds of Blackness, Patti LaBelle, Mary J. Blige,
Thank you.
BB Winans.
That was a night to
definitely
remember.
had some incredible artists. Fela Kuti, amazing artists. Femi Kuti, excuse me, not Fela. So I mean, it's the night, but you also created a production. Like to do that, having a regular night is one thing, but to have the artists come through, flying them in, money, dealing with their management, you know what I'm saying? But they're going to show up, I mean, it's a lot that goes into these events. And I don't think people nowadays understand, like you said, it's more than just going
That's
to
why
Guitar
you guys
Center.
don't go to any real clubs, because nobody's coming with the level of quality that you guys are used to.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to even throw this out. Me and Jay-Z was having a conversation, and he said, Kev, price is what you pay, but value is what you get.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like thinking, I'm not going to ask you to pay $20 when I'm not giving you the value of $20.
Mm.
And so that's why I think we don't have a club today, because first of all, nobody's willing to put that kind of money out. See, I wasn't scared of $300,000. I wasn't scared of 1.6 million. That didn't scare me. For some reason, even if I didn't have the money, the universe conspired for it to come together. I mean, Lynn would tell you, I put her on the train. One time I put her on the train with $29,000 in a backpack to go make a payment to somebody. She's nervous. And I'm like, nobody know you have that in your backpack.
Right.
But those kind of things was the growth process. And it helped me be this guy today. It's the reason why I wanted to tell younger people or people that's interested in this, if you're gonna do this, do it with quality. You got to put everything into it. And I know Shelter, we weren't the best because we didn't have all the money we wanted, but damn sure I was gonna make sure that we were the best that we could be every time y'all came.
Thank you for
Every
that.
time you guys came. I wanted you to be proud that that's my club. That's what gets me off. When y'all walk out there and say, "Oh, Shelter, oh, that's my club." Like, I wanted the patrons to feel like they owned the club, and I just was the maintenance guy. I'm just there as the janitor. I clean up the cups and the coffee and this well, when we could do cigarettes, and I clean out the toilet bowls, and I make sure that the plumbing is working and the electric is on.
Yeah,
I'm just watching it for y'all because it's y'all space.
yeah. Shelter was not only for the dance community, but just the music industry. I remember one time just being in Shelter and Prince shows up. He goes in the booth, and Timmy is like he we see Prince playing a record.
He's short. He's very short.
I was
Timmy
like,
was
yo,
shook. That's the only time I ever seen, because that Timmy back then was kind of cocky.
Yeah.
You peaceful God Timmy is different. I don't know this Timmy, but that Timmy was cocky. So nobody impressed him.
Right.
Maybe Stevie impressed him. Nobody impressed him.
I remember one time Timmy Regisford was playing he was playing at the Choice, and I thought he was a bouncer because he was like this, and I'm like, that's not Timmy. That's Timmy. I'm like, it's the bouncer for the Choice. And then I see him getting on the deck, so I'm like, oh, that is Timmy Regisford.
But that was Timmy, and Prince came in the club with Q-Tip.
Yeah,
because in New York everybody's together, and he got out. We didn't know who he was when he walked in the club. Q-Tip said, "I got a friend with me. Can we?" I said, "Bring him around the back," because I grew up at a time when rap and house were kind of equal. So I know P. Diddy and those guys from trying to make it in the music business. And Tip said, "Yo, Kev, I got a friend with me, but I don't want to bring him through the front door." All right, we'll go around the back. I'll meet you around there. The limousine pulls up. About 5 women get out. 6 women get out. I'm gonna tell you the story. So I'm like, 6 women. Okay, well, who are these women? I thought, he was hanging out with models. I'm like, okay, he hanging out with some models. And we get him inside the little VIP room, and I'm looking at all the girls, and there's this short girl. I'm like, well, they got the short girl hanging out with us, and that was Prince. So now
he wore the platform food. He used to wear the platform shoes so he could make himself taller.
Right, he had them on.
Yes, that's what he did because he was really short. Because I met him, so I couldn't believe I was taller than him.
Like 5'4". So I go in the DJ booth and I say, "Tim, you wouldn't believe this, man. This is like 4 a.m. now."
Yeah.
And Timmy's doing his thing, and I'm like, "Yo, Prince is here. Get the F out of here." And he keeps playing. I'm like, "No, man, really, Prince is here." So I bring Prince into the DJ booth. Timmy shook. He played every Prince record that he could find in his. And I said to him, I said, "Yo, he didn't come here to hear his records." So that's the first time I ever seen my brother really shook, especially
Shook up
Timmy at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, Bono came to the club and he wasn't that shook. For me, I was like, "That's Bono,"
But it's Prince. It's different.
Prince.
Right. And it was, and Tim was shook. He played every Prince record, and I'm like, "Yo, he didn't come here to hear his records. He came
That's
to
funny.
see what you're doing." And that's how
That's
Prince
so
was.
funny.
He wanted to know what was going on. And that's what he was there for. That was a great time. I mean, we have a million stories. That is too long to be on this thing tonight.
But that's a great story, though.
I like that story.
That's a good story. So All right, so Kevin, so now Blaze and Masters at Work merger we start to see a lot of collaborations between the two of you. How did that come about?
Well, it wasn't. It was Louie.
Louie. Yep.
Louie is a genius at net. Like I said, I'm bad at networking. Louie's the fun guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's the fun. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
everything's fun and happy. And obviously, according to him, he looked up to us, and then we looked up to him as comrades in the business. And it was him. Years he kept asking me, "Yo, we got to do something together. We got to do something together." We were never interested, Josh and I. So one day, Josh and I was home, and Louie calls, and he says, "I'm in the studio right now. I want you to come and let's work." We weren't doing anything. I had just bought my new Land Cruiser, so all right, let's go. And Josh go to the studio, and in our minds, we're thinking like, it's Louie. What does he want to do? What kind of record? The only thing that we had that was even kind of remotely Latin orientated at that time, and it really, if you heard the original production, only ones heard the original production is Ian Friday. The way we really wrote the song, we had a song called "Elements of Life."
I love that song. Oh my God.
And we went, and so Louie's playing a beat. And I said, "Yo, you think Elements of Life can fit on this?" Josh sits at the keyboards and he starts chording. And of course, he remembers the vocals. And he starts singing. And then Louis, "Oh my God, that's amazing." So now I have to try to remember all the lyrics. In the meanwhile, him and Josh continue to flesh out the song, the track. And Josh actually sang it as a demo. Wasn't supposed to be him as the lead vocalist. But the demo, again, like Alexander Hope, came out so well, we just decided to keep it. It was magic. And, you know, Louie really took that song and made it what it was. But the bone was the song that Josh and I wrote in this same room.
Okay.
And, you know, Ian's like one of my very closest friends. He has come over for years, and I've played records that you know, but you didn't hear the original when we actually wrote it. But he couldn't believe that Elements of Life, we wrote that probably 15 years before we worked with Louie on it.
Wow.
Universe.
Again, it's that thing, the universe conspiring. So originally the group wasn't even going to be Elements of Life. Louie just loved the name and the concept, so he made that into the whole thing. But that was really all Louie's pushing. It was him who really, it was Louie. Tell you, he's the one that really pushed me to DJ in front of people. Because he came to the shelter one night just to hang, and he saw me DJing. He was like, "Yo, I didn't know you could DJ like that." Something I do on, you know, Timmy's not here, I'm just killing time. And he's like, "Yo, you really ought to do it, Kevin." Like, no, you really ought to do it. So at the time I'm leaving shelter, him and I are talking. We had already done records together. So everybody's bummed out because, you know, when your favorite people split, you know, you and, oh man. And then Nicholas Matar, he knew I left shelter, and he comes to approach me about Cielo. He needed help. I'm trying to make this club pop. At first, when I went to Cielo, it wasn't my thing because I come from grunge baby powder. That's where we come from, shelter. Right? But I was just about in my late 30s, going into my 40s. And I was, you know, we were really successful. So I was living kind of a Sex in the City lifestyle. I was crazy. I had about 10, 12 girlfriends. I was dating, going to all the best restaurants. And I started dressing a little bit more like an executive. And I didn't want to that's not the kind of place you go to shelter and dress like in a suit. So Cielo became the concept of, I wanted to build a party that was based on Sex in the City. And that's really what Cielo was. Everything that we did around the marketing promotion was to attract women, really attract women to come and get those tangerine, those things that Carrie and them used to drink, those martinis and all that. We were trying to really just attract that audience of, that middle class, upper class New York
upscale thing.
Yeah, that's I wanted that roots party to be where I was in my life. I wasn't going to shelter no more. I didn't need to stay out till 3:00 the next day. And roots was me growing up, becoming at the time I had bought West End. So now I got a real job. So my life was changing. I wasn't hanging out all night. I wasn't in the studio as much as I was. I was being an executive, so to speak. And that roots party was that idea to turn that. And I loved Sex in the City. That was one of my favorite shows. And so that was the concept. And Louie made me DJ. No, it's going to be you DJing. Nah, you do it, man. Because Wednesday is Louie's natural night.
Right.
I was just happy to have him say, yeah, he'll do it. And now look how blessed I am. I work with two of the best, Timmy. And I was the business guy for that. And then now I'm going to work with Louie and be the business guy. I just wanted to do the same thing I was doing with Timmy for the Wednesday party. But Louie said, no, you're going to play. And I wasn't that interested in it, but I started to do it. And, he kept pushing me to do it. But I already had a background in DJing, so that wasn't that far.
So, all right. So Kevin, another shift, production to running a club. Now you're getting into the executive hat. So when I heard the news that you were taking over West End, I was like, wow. I mean, we weren't talking about Strictly Rhythm. We weren't talking about Nervous. We're talking about a real staple of, just a label who really wasn't so much into the house community. They did R&B records. So now you come into West End. How did that develop?
Well, Mel Sharon, he came to Shelter. He was a member. And he always would talk to me. He just thought I was a good businessman. He's like, I see you running the club, it's successful. I think you're a great businessman. Then he found out I was Blaze. So now that's extra. Like, you make records too. All right. Then I want you to come and be the president of West End. I was like, I'm not interested. I'll make records for you, whatever I do. I'm gonna tell you the real story. So,
all right,
it was the night that I booked Ashford and Simpson to play the show. Right? Well, I don't know if anyone of y'all were there or remember it. Ashford and Simpson with the live band. That's how I used to do shows when I was at show. Live band, everything.
Yep.
And they were in the club, and there's no way I'm gonna think it's not gonna be packed. Ashford and Simpson, jam packed. So Ashford and Simpson charged me $34,000. So I had to come up with the $17,000 to get them to say, yeah, that's how business works. You come up with half, and then you get the other night. And I was able to do that. But the night of the club, I usually can count on the club earning enough to pay the balance. And this particular night, it wasn't enough people. And I'm nervous. How am I going to tell Ashford and Simpson I don't have their money? How am I going to tell the people that came to the club that they're not going to perform? Like, this is Ashford and Simpson. I look up to them. And I'm nervous. And literally, I'm in the box office. And literally, I'm banging my head against the wall. I needed about $6,000 more. I had $11,000. I needed to give them $17,000. I needed $6,000. And it's getting later and later, and still not enough people coming. And I'm literally, I should have been wearing a diaper because that's how much I was.
Wow.
And I'm like, how am I? So you got Ashford and Simpson, you got all the people who came with them. What's his name? Wesley Snipes is in the club.
Mm-hmm.
You got all these model, the guy from Island, Chris, the guy who used to own Island Records.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Blackwell.
Naomi Campbell's in the club.
Wow.
I'm gonna look like the biggest a-hole.
Oh no.
I don't have their money. So Mel sees that I'm kind of freaking out at the door because I'm counting every single. And now I'm thinking, where am I gonna find $6,000 at 3:00 in the morning? There's no way possible. Like, I don't even know drug dealers that I could call at 3:00 in the morning. And Mel said, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Oh, Mel, Uncle Mel." I used to call him Uncle Mel. Uncle Mel, yeah. This is what happened. So. And I don't know what I'm gonna do. And he leaves. He goes back in the club. About 15 minutes later, he comes back out. He said, "Well, what you gonna do?" I said, "I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna have to find a way to tell everybody that this thing is called off and make amends with Ashford and Simpson and their people." And like, really, I was gonna lose. I was gonna take a L. He left. He came back. He said, "Well, I have a little money in the hotel that I could probably loan you." I said, "Well, I need about $6,000. He said, "I don't know. I think I might have that much." I said, "If you offering it, I have to take it. I have to take it." We got in my car. We drove to his hotel. He went in. He came out. $6,000 in the envelope. We went back. I paid Ashford and Simpson. The show went on. But now I owe him. I can pay him back. Yeah, I can pay him back next week, but I owed him the favor. So now with all his talking about me coming to work at West End, I got to kind of honor that now. So I said, okay. And when we met, when I paid him back, he invited me to lunch at his house. And I paid him back. And then he said, "I really want you to do this, but there's no way I can keep saying no now." And I remember Josh saying, no, I can't even tell that story. Well, everybody knows Mel is an icon in that community. And Josh said, either you're going to pay the cash or you're going to pay So I'm like, that ain't even funny, man. Anyway, we have lunch. He said, "Oh, he's setting you up now. He really gonna get it."
Doing the West End thing.
Right, exactly. And we talk, and he's talking about West End, and then he explains to me that West End actually controls Paradise Garage brand. And then the light went off.
Yeah.
If I can marry Shelter to the Paradise Garage, that's never been done.
Wow.
We could put out records with Timmy and Larry's name on it. Shelter could sell Paradise Garage gear. Like, I started thinking like, oh man, this is gonna be amazing. I could, Shelter's basically the daughter of the Garage. So this is perfect. Like, I got both of them that I'm gonna control, those two brands. And we started. I said yes. And he said, "Well, I want you to." I said, "No, if I'm coming, I gotta have equity." "Well, what do you want?" I said, if I'm gonna sign records, man, I gotta have some percentage. And then me and his lawyer sat down, and she said, "Well, Mel had to pay $300,000 to get the West End catalog back. So if you want to come in, he's willing to sell you half for $150,000. I don't have $150,000. So I'm thinking. I call up all the record companies that I know, and me and John, that's how we made Most Precious Love. I'm collecting money through doing record deals to raise the money, because I done spent all the money on Shelter. I don't have any more
Mm.
money. And then I sold the house, and I raised the money, and I bought 50% of West End. Actually, I didn't buy 50%. Mel would only sell me 49%. He
That's
wanted to keep
right.
51 for himself.
The controlling interest. That's right.
Right. So, but it married Paradise Garage and Shelter. And that was really what I was thinking about doing. That was the plan at that time.
Mhm.
And that was 2002. Yeah. And we did a big party in Central Park where we had Grace Jones come and perform.
Mm-hmm.
And we had Tapino, Llanos, but Timmy didn't want any part of it.
Right.
So he didn't play. But we did a big party in Central Park with Grace Jones. It was for Gay Pride Weekend.
Yes.
And then after Central Park, we did the reception on the roof of 39th Street at the Shelter. And we did all of this to introduce Shelter to New York press, the Times, Time Out Magazine. We had the hors d'oeuvres, and Campari was the drink sponsor. And that was the concept, to marry Shelter, Paradise Garage, and for me to be able to control both of those brands.
Mhm.
And then, like I said, me and Timmy stopped speaking. I think all of that had something to do with it. He probably thought my focus was off. But I really thought that was amazing. Shelter would control Paradise Garage. That's amazing. And but that was me thinking as a megalomaniac, young businessman trying to run things. And but that was really it. So it was really Mel loaning me that $6,000 to pay Astrid and Simpson, what made me say yes.
You know, Kevin, it's like, you know, a lot of times as individuals, we encounter like a roadblock or barriers, or, you know, we foresee like these challenges. It's either we fold, it's like that fight or flight, you know. And I think, you know, given that you experienced that situation, it was an opportunity for you to grow, because you had to go through that in order to get to that level of executive. Because if that didn't happen, who knows if you would have, you know, been at that behind the desk. And I remember it, to me, you know, that was great news.
Sign one of your records.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that. And the campaign that you utilized, I remember that, where you were building things. We did the Larry Levan event at Together in Spirit, where we had Tino and Joey play, and Mel was there. We hired Colonel Abrams. So I remember that whole campaign. And then you had the United Dance Music compilation at that time with King Street. So and then talking about teams, you had Cynthia Cherry. Like, how, I mean, she's amazing. She is responsible for Orchanate's career and Jovan. Like, how did that come about? Because she was part of your team at West End.
Well, Cynthia, she used to work at Jump Street Records.
Okay.
And we used to do remixes for Jump Street. And she was like a big sister. You know, she's the coolest, the hippest person you could know. At any age, she was just hip and cool. And she became like a big sister to me. So when I found out, when I went to Shelter, I had money that I could create salaries for people. When I got West End, I needed somebody to focus, because I had to focus on, now remember, I had to focus Shelter. I had to focus on Blaze. I had to focus on, you don't know this company, Last Minute Realty, because I had a realty company. I had to focus on Renaissance Travel because we own limousines. So I had a lot of different things running at the same time, but I needed somebody that I could trust to do West End. And she was right there. So, you know, we made the deal that she could come do West End, and all I needed to do, I needed to try to oversee all of that. And that's how it got started. Because, you know, with West End and Garage came merchandising. Now I got to oversee international merchant. Like
Wow.
We was running like a real thing for a while. I had 22 employees at one time. And everything was based out of the offices at the Shelter. And then when I moved to West End, we based it all there. And if you remember, Will, we built the precursor to Track Source. A lot of people don't know that.
Talk about that.
Well, you remember West End was selling digital downloads before.
That's right.
Track Source even came on. So that was another $60,000, $70,000 investment to get the technology to be able to sell digital downloads. It's just that Mel and I had two different concepts. He wanted to big the legacy of West End. Yeah. That was it. And I understood it. He wasn't really interested in the future. He was just like, yo, this is my history, you know, and he knew his time, you know, he wanted to make it glorified. So the main thing that I worked on at West End was the documentary. It came out eventually, but that's not the documentary that I started. If you remember, we went to Miami and we did the West End part.
Yeah. That was the
documentary.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
So, you know, we was managing a lot of things. I was having a good time now. Trust me. I was eating at the best restaurants.
Yes.
Buying the best clothes, everything. But I was really enjoying all of the work that I was doing and having fun. And I wanted to, you know, I wanted to show the rap guys that they weren't having all the fun. We were having fun too. We had a great time. So getting to doing all of that is to say I'm proud of it. Everybody, what I'm really proud of, Will, is most of my partners, from my production partner Josh to my nightlife partners Timmy and Louie, to my realty partners, to my fitness partner. I own a gym right here. In Maplewood called Diamond Gym. And everybody's made money. Everybody's did well when I was working with them. I'm proud mostly of that. I was a catalyst to success, financially and notoriety wise. You know, you and I talked about that. I mean, people were trying to do a lot of parties before they got to Roots. That didn't make it.
Yep.
True.
When we got to Roots, we were successful. I didn't say to myself, oh, Shelter's not going to be good when I left, but I knew what I was taking when I left. I knew what I was taking when I left. Understood. And then we built, you know, we started West End. I ran it for 7 years and then we sold it. And I was going to retire after I sold it.
You know, you and I had conversations about the 25 years later. I know the whole concept behind that, but I'm glad that, you know, you're still here with us doing, you know, doing your thing, you know.
Man, it's God. It's all of this is to say that if you dream big enough, I hate to sound cliche, and you really put the intention in the world,
it'll happen.
It's gonna be there. You don't even know how. Like, I don't know how I go from a little kid in Newark with no money, single parent mom, living in a 1-bedroom apartment. My mom sleeps in the living room. I sleep in the bed, like literally, to going around the world. That's amazing. That is amazing.
So, Kevin, I wanted the audience to really get the full picture of everything, like the timeline, because I believe we talked about you know, being in the music business for several years, and I wanted them to get the full story. Sandy Paradiselady asks a question, and I think it's an important question. She asks what happened to Josh Milan.
Again, you know, I think I'm gonna put it this way. If you ever read the book, come on, what's Babyface's partner name?
Oh, you're talking about
yeah, that guy. That guy. I forgot his name right now. I mean, you would think. Anyway, I'll take his story. I think I got so busy with everything else. We was making money. Things were moving. I got real estate. I got nightlife. I got all these things going. I'm crazy. I'm young. I think he might have thought that I was not focused on what we originally started. And maybe that was where he started to, maybe I wasn't really communicating well. I'm putting it on myself. Maybe I wasn't communicating well with him about everything. Because to me, if I had 50% of Shelter, he had 50% of my percent.
Mm-hmm.
If I had 50% of West End, he owned, like he was my brother like that. Like I didn't think of us as separate. And through our whole career, I pretty much did the business end. So there were opportunities that I had to get things finished as far as making contracts, arrangements that I did for the both of us included. And money was never a problem. But I think after a while, he started to feel like maybe I'm not interested or not focused on being the guy that would come to the studio with him every day because I didn't have that kind of time anymore.
Right.
Everything was going. I didn't, and I would come to the studio, but not see when we first started all those years ago, the concept was you could work, you can get a job. And if you get a job, you're going to work from 9 to 5 every day. So my discussion with Josh was, we're going to treat the studio like the job. We're going to get to the studio every day at 10 a.m. and work till whenever we finish. And we would do this every day, Monday through Thursday. And we would take off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We did that for at least 15 years straight. That's how we was able to write and produce so many projects. Because we made it into our job. Like the job was to come to work, come to the studio. And sometimes we would get here, and like I said, it wouldn't even be writing a song. It'd just be listening to a bunch of songs that him and I both liked. So that's really, but I think maybe my communication level with him, what I was involved with business-wise, wasn't as clear as I needed it to be. And because things were running so fast, and in my head and in my heart, he's first. What I mean by that is there's people that know if we had a plane flight and say they couldn't afford 2 first-class tickets, Josh got the first-class ticket. I sat in the coach. There's people through at the time, you know, they would have to pay Blaze maybe 10 to 15 grand. If they could only afford 5,000, I wouldn't take the money. I would just give him his 5. So maybe, you know, he got married and I stopped being around him every day when he got married because before it was just me and him. We were always together. But when you get married, you know, your life is different. Your wife don't want me sitting up in the house every day. So I stopped being around him every day because of his marriage. Then that opened me up to do all these other business things that I was doing. And I don't know if he felt like I was moving too fast, just not interested. But the way, oh man, I can't, it was LA and Babyface. The way L.A. Reid talks about it in his book, how him and Babyface split up, is exactly the way it went for me and Josh. It wasn't mad. It was like we just miscommunicated. My communication level wasn't good. Yeah. So that's a problem that I have because obviously the same thing with Timmy. My communication level wasn't. I'm running and doing everything, thinking that they understand that my efforts is for the both of us. And maybe they don't think that. You know, maybe Timmy didn't think me getting West End and Garage was for us. He might have just thought, you know, Kevin doing his own thing now. You know, maybe Josh started thinking that. Honestly, him and I have never had a conversation.
Wow.
Never had a conversation.
Kevin, you and I broke bread on the side before this panel interview, and I shared with you something that we both have in common, which is that story, of a particular artist that I work with,
Right.
And it's sad, and a lot of it deals with communication, and miscommunication is someone else sometimes overthinking what it is when it really isn't that.
Well,
And
it's other people talking to them too.
it's and that's the side of the business that I'm uncomfortable with. It's like I felt like during that dismantle between you and Josh, the peers had to kind of like pick sides or choose which way they were going to go, and I just think that's unfair. I think because
go ahead.
we don't have the full story of everything that happened.
Well, they
And
see. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And and sometimes people look at it from outside in, they put their own judgment or their own emotion on it, and it's not what it is.
Well, I'll tell you some of the things that happened. I know in me and Timmy's relationship was Shelter was doing well. We had all these things going. We done married the garage and Shelter. The New York Times interviews me. So Timmy feels some kind of way. Because I'm talking in the interview. Same thing for Josh. Maybe they felt like I was trying to do it just for me. And in my heart, I think I have proven that I was doing it for the both of all of them. Matter of fact, honestly, y'all have to understand, it's not just for Kevin, Josh, Timmy, especially Shelter. It was for our New York community. I wanted us to have a place on the world stage. That because you hear these stories, oh, New York's not like it used to be. You go around the world, oh, Italy is hot now and this, that. No, we the best. Everybody's trying to copy us. Everybody in the world is trying to copy New York. And I wanted New York to have a better. And I'm from Jersey, but
yes, you are. Stop playing.
Say, Jersey people don't like me because they don't think I'm from Jersey or like.
We love you. That's not true. We love you.
Jersey people,
we love you, and we are very, very proud of you. And the one thing that I want to add to what you're talking about is going back to the universal law. Sometimes as the creators, and I am speaking to you and I am speaking to Will, sometimes as the creators, there's a journey and a path that only you get to go. So sometimes you are the person that commingles, but then you become the facilitator, and then you have to step away. So every place that you go, everybody's not going to get to go with you. Some of the journey you have to journey alone.
That's beautiful. I mean, Rumi is one of my favorite poets. Jalal al-Din Rumi, Muhammad. And he says, it's your path and yours alone. People can walk it with you, but no one can walk it for you.
Right.
And so what you're saying, correlating to what you said, that's why I know God's not finished with me yet.
That's right.
I mean,
any of us.
Right. I mean, to some degree, this kind of thing could have happened between me and Louie as well. I learned to manage it better because when we got to the radio show, I'm the one on the microphone. So now people are, it's Kevin. Maybe he could have felt like I'm getting too much light or shine or whatever the case. But because I had experienced it with my other partners, hopefully I learned to manage it better so that he doesn't feel like I'm trying to do my own thing, so to speak. That's what bothers me. I'm now, the other ego part of me is like, everybody made money, so I'm happy. Like they can't take that away from me.
That's right.
But at the same time, it's like you said, that might be. I know all of this had to happen for me to want to be a dad to my. That really what it is. When I look at him, that inspires me from the past till now.
Yeah.
I don't even know how it does that, but it does.
Being a parent changes you.
Well,
It made
I'm
me.
gonna put it in the universe. I'm gonna just put this in the universe
Yes, ma'am.
that you and Josh and Will and whomever get the opportunity to speak one on one and just put every all of the other distractions aside, because there is a creative edge, a creative force in those two things that only you and he can pull together and make it that thing. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
It,
I'm gonna say amen to that. But
Mhm.
people have talked to me about that several times. We're two different people now.
Hmm.
I'm not the same Kevin I was 20 years ago.
You're
He's
a
not the
better
same
version
guy.
of yourself.
Well,
and
that could be argued. You ask my wife. She had to, but
it's a level of acceptance. Having the willingness to let go and understand that that was for that purpose, and you have to move on
Hmm.
and understand if the other person isn't willing, then that's a level of you just got to be like, all right, well, it is what it is, and not question it. What did Uncle Mel say before he moved on? Nothing happens by accident, and
nothing
sometimes
happened by
we try
accident.
to
We always
force
used to.
certain things to happen, and it's
Mhm.
just not made to be. And then when things crash, you ask yourself, why did it happen? Well, you didn't
Yep.
look at the
I
signs.
wouldn't have had the money. If I would have had the money to pay after this, I would have never became West End. You
Hmm.
know,
Mhm.
think about that. And then that catapulted everything else to leading to selling West End. And then if I would have never left Timmy, we'd have never did Cielo.
Mhm.
And probably there would be no, we've been on the radio 12 years.
Mhm.
I'm proud of that. That's longer than any other house mix DJ ever did the radio. Think about it. Go back and think about it.
Mhm.
Even our legendary people, Tony and Jeff and those guys, they didn't last 12 years. And we did it in a time when house music is not the premier music of New York.
Right.
Right.
And I'm proud that I was able to manage the relationship between us as the artists and with BLS, because BLS is a business. They don't care about anything else but
Mhm.
how
Number.
many
Money.
commercials is on during our time.
That's right.
Mhm.
Mm.
That's all they care about. And when Funkmaster Flex took over the mix show part of it, I mean, I got to be honest, he was amazingly complimentary. He wanted everything to move to a 90s format, but he
Mhm.
understood that we didn't do that. He gave me the option to move out of prime time, or he wouldn't be able to let me be on if I wasn't doing 90s.
Mhm.
I said, all right, so what's out of prime time? Because I wasn't interested in coming on at 2 a.m.
Right.
He said, no, no, no. I said, how about 11? He said, that's still waiting time. He said, if you're okay with 12, you can stay and do anything you want, any kind of music you want, whatever you want to do. This is Funk Master Flex saying he understood what we did. So all of that I had to go through all that to be able to even manage this situation.
Mhm.
So it's been a good run. I mean, this is the longest I ever spent talking about this to anybody. Um, I I don't know if I feel purged or if I feel lighter. Um, but I didn't do any of this. I didn't work with Josh or Timmy or Louie thinking we're gonna do this and make money.
Mhm.
Did it because I love those guys and I wanted our success equally to be celebrated with them. And what makes me the proudest is Shelter just had a 30th anniversary.
Mhm.
I know if it had not been for the work we did 20 years ago,
Hmm.
there would be nobody wanting to go to a 30th anniversary. That's what makes me proud. I mean, it's a book by Jim Collins called Good to Great.
Mhm.
And in that book, he discussed being able to build a company. I love business and books. Being able to build a business that can last without you.
Mm.
And so when I see Shelter still throwing parties today, the work I did didn't go in vain.
Mhm.
You're a part of
When
that,
I see
right?
Josh making amazing records today, I know the work we did together is still a part of me, what
Hmm.
we created together, or anything else.
So Kevin, when I hear like a Robert Owens track or a Larry Heard, I know that there's a difference. When I hear a Josh Milan track, I know there's a difference. When I listen to your production today, there's a difference. What do you think is missing between your
Blaze is missing.
and what's that chemistry? What's that one chemistry you would identify, or that one factor that's missing?
Yo, man. Yo, Kev, what do you think about this? Yo, Jay, Josh, check this out. That's what's missing. Is being excited to get his opinion.
That chemistry.
Validation. Mm-hmm.
From a mix, from a sonic mix, to the songwriting, to hear those falsettos, the high, we don't hear those.
All of it. It's all of it. It's, yo, what do you think about this line? Or a lot of times, the lyrics would be written. He would go in the booth, and then I'm still writing as he's singing. No, we got to change that line. Like the fact that him and I would be working and leave and go to Starbucks and get coffee and a cigar, and the rest of the day, like that's what's missing. Now, I haven't done any Kevin Hedge music. Anything that I released in the last 15, 20 years has been records that Josh and I started together. I haven't had any inspiration to even try to do a Kevin Hedge record, to be honest with you. I've been focused
to change that, Kev.
That was my question. I was going to ask you, what is next for you?
I'm a father to this little boy. That's what's next. Like, I'm blessed enough to have had a career up until this point where I can spend every day with him.
That's love.
Like, I can spend and I want to. I can every day when I get up, I'm with him, getting him dressed for school, giving him breakfast, taking him to school, picking him up. We go to his therapies together. That's I don't know. I don't think of nothing else beyond that right now.
Okay.
I mean, Will got me doing these podcast things, and that's why we invested in House Music Community on Air, because if we're gonna do it, we learn from the shelter. You gotta own it.
Yeah.
See, that's one of my regrets is the fact that, think about this, guys, and y'all are part of this too. You came to Cielo. We was there 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
The average mortgage is what? 30 years?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we paid the mortgage on that building for half the mortgage time. But when the guy said he wanted to sell the building,
right,
we were out of business.
That's the issue. Yes. And that's happening everywhere.
And it happened with us downtown with Vinyl, Shelter, whatever it was called at the end.
Here too. Mm-hmm.
It happened on 39th Street. Like,
yeah,
he couldn't afford to stay there. But the owner can still sell the building for like $30 million.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But you, the crowd, I say you, we all went there for 15 years and helped that owner pay for that building.
You got that right.
And he walked away with the equity.
That's right.
So
wow.
Now I'm interested in doing a club, but I want to own the building. Because I did that at Shelter. We was working at Shelter 15 years. So we paid half the house. By paying rent. And I'm talking real rents too. I mean, we took Shelter, my rent was $27,000 a month. When we got to Cielo, the rent was more like $65,000 to $70,000.
Oh my.
At the end, one of the reasons why we couldn't afford to go because the owner wanted $1 million lease.
Wow.
There's no way we can do that. No way. So
wow.
Again, he gets to keep the building and he's in business.
Universal law.
But we had to stop. And that's why I haven't really went in to do anything. Right now, we're in the process of buying the building that the gym is in for that purpose. I learned that over the years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you would think I learned it from Larry Levan. You got to be the owner.
Mhm.
I didn't think about being the owner of the property.
Right.
You know, I knew that I needed to own intellectual copyrights or intellectual properties when I bought West End. That's what sold the publishing and the master rights.
Right.
Mhm.
That's what sold. That's what allowed me to be with my son every day.
That's what's up.
And you know, obviously, I get royalties off records, and I licensed my catalog to Defected, and they work the catalog for me.
Mhm.
And but me writing and producing again, when God says this is what you're gonna do, then that's what's gonna happen.
Okay.
Right now, I'm focused on
Believe in
eating
that.
every day,
Okay.
every day.
Kevin, is there one particular release that's a commercially available that you would say, you know what, if I had the opportunity to do over, I would do it over? What project or what song would that be?
What do you mean?
Like, you
Records
know,
that
some
we've done or something that's
that
out
that
now?
that you've done as Blaze that might have been like a technical area, like, oh man, that was an error. If I could fix that, I would fix it.
Honestly, I hate to be honest, like there's so many I can't even. I think the best record we've ever done is Found Love.
Mhm.
Mm,
I
it's a
think that's
beautiful
the
song.
Mm.
culmination of all of the years and writing styles, and because you know, it was a record that we was able to bring our bossa nova influence and make it a dance floor record too. I think that's the best record we've ever done. You know, and
Wow.
that's pretty
That's
much the last record we've done.
Mhm.
yeah, that's a masterpiece. You know, when we talked about the Grammy, I feel like the Lacey project that you did
Oh,
on
yeah.
Easy Street should have been that Grammy for you. You know, speaking of DeLacy, you know, I remember I was in Smack's office in Inglewood because I was one of the ghost
I just
producers
talked
for
to
the
Mike
track.
2 days ago.
Yeah, and he was playing on a DAT, the track, the Alexander
Mhm.
Hope, and the I think DeLacy went under a different name at that time, that duet,
Yeah.
For the Love of You. And I remember it was like one big machine. Like he's playing it for me. Eddie Perez comes in, he just finished a mix, and he's like, yo, listen to this. And I heard the song for the first time, like, yo, this is amazing. This sounds like an Alexander O'Neill Sherelle track. So Mike was like, I'm gonna take it further. He calls John Robinson on the phone. He's like, we hear John going nuts over it. That weekend, he plays it on WBLS. To me, like that song right there, you know, out of all of the songs that you've done, For the Love of You is really, to me, sets the tone because it was something different than what
We
you
normally
and
do.
Josh Milan did in
Well,
your
and that's the amazing thing of Josh, to be able to flip the production style with me. Like, you know, just different production style, different song quality. You know, we not most of the songs I'm gonna write are gonna be about world peace and world love and spirituality and God. Josh writes How Deep Is Your Love?
Mhm.
You know, he's gonna write that song that go for the women, you know, your body. You know, like he's gonna write those songs. So yeah, I'm gonna write
Those are the sexy songs.
Coming from the
right,
church. Come on, Josh.
Yes,
right.
sir.
So those are the songs that you know that he could really be more involved in writing lyrically. I'm more like I'm gonna talk about how can we save the world.
Okay.
And then when Josh comes in and he's got one of the songs I think is one of the better songs that was written, um, Sweeter Than the Day Before.
mm,
A lot of people don't know that song. Check it out, man. Just listen to the lyrics of that song. Really phenomenal. Talking about every day with you gets sweeter than the day before. Talking about his wife. So just interesting when you think I love songwriting. I study songwriters from Gershwin to Stevie Wonder. They were all amazing to me. To, you know, I guess Mozart. Mozart wrote
Mm-hmm.
Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
Yes, he did.
And then they took that and co-opted the melody and did Happy Birthday. So
Right.
it's just an amazing. I love every aspect of this music thing. I told you this, well, I love it all. I love from the writing the songs, to engineering, to producing, to mixing, to throwing the parties, to running the business, to doing the contracts. Every aspect that I think God built me for this.
Wow.
He built me for this.
You know, going to songwriting, being able to say I want to spend the rest of my life with you without actually saying it is a craft in itself. And like you mentioned that song, like Sweeter Than the Day Before, it reminds me of just being able to really speak from the heart. And a Blaze song always had that, you know. It had those elements of emotional content. Now there's a point where Blaze starts to go more on the Earth, Wind and Fire route, or George Duke more of a big vocal production with the harmonies. Was that intentional? Was there something happening there?
Well, I tell everybody, if it wasn't for fantasy, I would have never been born. The first time I heard that record, I was born. I knew what I wanted to do in life when I heard that record. Mm-hmm. So everything we were doing was trying to emulate. If you're listening to the album 25 years later, you'll hear all of our influences, from Stevie to Marvin to Earth, Wind and Fire to John Coltrane to all of them. You'll hear in there. So yeah, that was intentional. Like, we wanted to make records nobody else. That's my thing. I want to do things nobody else would even attempt to do, even with doing parties. I don't bring Mary J. Blige if I think anybody else going to even attempt to do this, because nobody's going to. We spent $100,000 to get her there.
Wow.
And no way we can make the money. You can't put enough people in the club. So it was about promoting the brand. Just the fact that I knew that's like, it's responsible for them doing parties today, because we did something so iconic. Grace Jones was $35,000 every time she showed up, plus another $5,000 in Ryder. Ryder, $1,200 just at Nobu, just for sushi. Then she had to have, what's that gold bottle? Champagne?
Moet.
No, gold bottle. Cristal. 6 bottles of Cristal. He had to have every time. And I tried to get over.
Oh my gosh.
Strong J.
Right. And me and her became really good friends too. I tried to get over on it. I bought 3 bottles of Cristal and put them out and left them there. She calls me. She said, "Kevin, honey." I said, "Yes." I used to call her madam. "Yes, madam." She said, "If I don't see another 2 bottles of Cristal, I'm leaving." I'm shocked. I'm nervous now. Everybody's in the club. They're waiting on, Grace traditionally didn't go on until 4 or 5 in the morning.
Right.
Now it's like 4:30. I want to put her on the stage. She's telling me she's not going on until she see. I only bought 4 bottles.
Oh, Jesus.
So I had to run around New York to different bars to find 2 more bottles of Cristal. I had to go to 2 different bars, and I had to pay $350 a bottle for each one, just so that she could be happy and go on stage. And what would kill you about Grace is you order all this food from Noble, she wouldn't eat. That was just for the people that was coming to hang out with her. So, and at the time, you had to do it. But that's the things that I feel bad about kids today. They're not going to experience those kind of amazing things. When I had Shaka Khan at the club, and I don't know if she was, I had to say, I think she was a little high, because she was like talking out of her head, like while she's in the dressing room, just being crazy. I'm like, nerve-wracking to think how I'm going to get her on the stage because she's so crazy. Or when the best show we ever had, I know some of y'all might disagree. Y'all probably don't remember this. We had Cheryl Lynn come to Shelter. I don't
remember that one.
I don't remember the year. But she came to Shelter to sing, and I gave her a track listing, but she didn't have Shake It Up Tonight.
Mm-mm.
And I was like, well, that's one of the songs they want to hear Star Love.
Right.
And she did Keep It Hot, the first record. Then she did We Don't Care About That Lifesaver record. That's not really our kind of record. But she did that. Then she needed to do Shake It Up Tonight. She didn't have the track for it.
Yeah.
Homegirl started singing it up tonight. Started singing it live, like a cappella.
Yes.
And killed it. Had the crowd open. So she finished singing that. Then she did I think what was her other record? Got to Be Real. Then she did Got to Be Real. Now the crowd is really open. And she leaves. And everybody's like, what the hell? Because everybody's waiting to hear Star Love. She goes back in the dressing room. I'm looking at, I don't know how to say, what we doing. She waits till all the lights go off. Turns on, and then all you hear is "Come with me tonight," and the crowd.
Wow.
I still get goosebumps today.
How nice.
I still get goosebumps today.
Wow.
That was the very best show I ever felt. I mean, we had Patti LaBelle. I mean, she was amazing. I thought we was gonna have to take her to the hospital because she wanted to wear that fur coat on stage, and it was already 110 degrees in the club. She wanted to wear that fur coat. And, I didn't know Patti LaBelle drank and smoked. That was interesting. Mm-hmm. When she comes in and she's smoking a cigarette and she wants Hennessy, and I'm like, you're my aunt. Like, you're not supposed to be doing this. Yeah. But, again, that was another, she needed $40,000 for her to do those shows. But that's the kind of money we would spend to build that brand Shelter. That's what you do.
Wow. I always call the Shelter time like the golden era of house music because money was being generated at that time,
Yeah, well, definitely it wasn't as much as it was maybe 10, 15 years earlier. We were still kind of pulling it, but at least all of us were younger and we could attend the parties. Mm-hmm. Now, we are almost in our 60s. So we can't go every week like we used to. And and we'd rather go to the park because we could be up in our normal sleep-wake pattern. Like now, I mean, I'm in bed by like 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, So that's what I always thought what made Body and Soul successful is that they were in the normal sleep-wake pattern. Mm-hmm. So you was normally up at that hour anyway, so you can go to the club. Yeah. And the audience that they attracted wasn't interested in watching football. So they that was really a phenomenal situation, what they did.
Gotcha. Kevin, I remembered we had a conversation one time, and I think this is during Cielo. You mentioned about maybe developing. I think you and Louie Vega was about to do like a DJ management company.
Louie was. It was. I don't want to manage you guys. Forget that. Okay. Louie was doing it. I'm not. I never wanted. I mean, I managed Stephanie Cook for a while, but managing is babysitting. Because you know what? When your rent's due, you're calling your manager. And the manager has to figure out how to make sure your rent gets covered because he wants you to be a successful artist. And I never wanted to be a manager. No, I don't even know. Well, Jay-Z's in a different situation. He's a billionaire. So if Rihanna needs her mortgage paid, he can pay it for her. But, artists I have paid rent for and babysitters and shop for food and giving them my credit card, all kind of stuff you have to do.
Who were some of the DJs or artists that you've mentored?
I don't know if I like mentored them, but they kind of came around me, and obviously Ian Friday, obviously Jihad, probably Beloved, because they just got to be friends with me and come to the studio.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not used to them looking at me as somebody. Like, I'm just cool. Like, they're my brothers. So we're working with Nunu now. She's DJing and trying to learn production. But that's it. I mean, I want my guy. That makes me proud that those guys are able to build a career for themselves. Where I don't have to do it for them. Like, I put their records out. Even like you, I'm gonna take credit for you. Put your first record out, and now you can do it for yourself. That makes me proud. You're successful without me having to help you continue to do it. Whatever we did in the beginning, you learned the process. Now you can go do it on your own. So,
one of the things I always remember, well, a few things, you were like the drums. Make sure your drums is out there, and you always said that remember the clubs that are gonna play your music, they already have its natural reverb. So why already put all that reverb in there when you already have it? So
exactly.
Those are things that I remember.
Well, and you learn well. I mean, mixing is an art form that I love. And now I think we might be boring them because we tech talk. But that is what mixing is like painting a picture.
Yeah.
You gotta paint the clouds and the sun and the stars and the grass and the people. So that's the way I look at it. Like it's art. I like if you send me a record, I might mix it all day and then mix it more tomorrow. And I just finished mixing a record for Ian.
Yeah.
It's gonna be good too.
Nice,
he don't want me to play it yet, so I'm pissed off about that.
All right.
But
Kevin, any advice for someone who's looking to get into the industry, or for like the younger audience who we're seeing presenting themselves into the music business?
I just want them to learn the craft. Like, don't focus on your name being out there. I see too much of that. Everybody's on the internet. You know what upsets me? And Nunu always gets on me about this. Why are you making a T-shirt with your name on it when you haven't done anything? Pisses me off. It doesn't have nothing to do with me. I never had a T-shirt. Like, why are you making a T-shirt with your name on it? You don't have. I see, and so I see with this. I guess social media has taken things to the level where you want to be famous, but you don't want to be great at what you do. See, here's the thing, man. When we do this, when I set up the DJ, I don't do it because I want her to be like, oh my God, Kevin's great. I do it with a purpose. I want to be better myself. I want to get better every time I produce a record, every time I make a record deal, every time I produce a show, every time I do an event. I want to be better. I want to be the greatest that did it. I call Louie's the GOAT. I'm going to give him that. He's the GOAT. But I take my props because I've done more entities with success than he actually has done. I had to own and run a club and nightlife and run and own like a major intellectual copyright company. So,
yeah,
because even West End, it was books. Y'all don't know about it, but we own books too. Like, and then, West End, when you own those copyrights, what really allowed us to be able to sell the company is Biggie Smalls' Life After Death. He had sampled some West End product, and it sold 10 million. So like my brother, what's his name? Fat Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday's price is not today's price. So that changed the game when we realized we had samples on Life After Death, Biggie Smalls' last album. The price immediately changed. I'm looking for them M's at that point.
Yeah.
I know that's what it's worth.
Mm-hmm.
And then J-Lo, that was interesting. Licensing for J-Lo, being in Miami and
wow,
seeing her asking for the right to license the record. That was crazy.
Yeah.
But then, that was a part of the business. We missed the Winter Music Conference.
Yes.
Because if we was at the Winter Music Conference, you would know Cielo aside. You would have these guys who produce these records today that are amazing. You would know them because you would have met them at the Winter Music Conference.
Right.
But today we don't have that. That's something I was thinking about doing, call it the World House Music Conference. I wanted to do it in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Wow.
Huh?
No, I said wow.
And me and Simon Dunmore actually spoke about it. And because I think Charlotte is a city that is international. They have an international airport.
Mm-hmm.
The price of Charlotte is reasonable. You can get a hotel room there for reasonable. And they would like that kind of tourist infrastructure because the politicians in Charlotte support even the little house music guys that's down there. They support them. Mm-hmm. So that's what I talked to Gary Wallace about this about 2 years ago.
Okay. Wow.
And I mean, make it big, like real, really something big. Seminars, everything, but not a whole week, but maybe a weekend of the best DJs and all kind of DJs and in one city where maybe 2,000-3,000 of us show up down there and just have a good time and be an international house music festival. That's what I wanted to call it. And we even spoke to Kulo the song, and you know who DJ Fresh is?
Yeah.
Yeah, spoke to him about it. They were all interested, but I had a son, so that kind of made my priorities change.
Yeah.
But that's what I would like to see you do, Will, and you and your team, matter of fact. Y'all are good at marketing and promoting. Let's put together that. Or at least you could do something like this in New York where you get guys like Morales to come on and tell you his experience. Mm-hmm. And you get people that's up and coming that can ask him questions.
Most
definitely. That would be great. And then we could tell them about how to manage their publishing. Mm-hmm. The fact that Will, as a producer, DJ, songwriter, you're really in about 4 or 5 businesses at the same time. Mm-hmm. But most of the time, you don't realize that. Right. You're in the business of being a DJ. You're in the business of being a songwriter. You're in the business of being a producer. You're in the business of being a record label. Mm-hmm. Look at all them 3 businesses right there. You have 3 revenue streams. Sometimes you have to sacrifice one for the other. But at the end of the day, I don't know if you heard Kanye said this. He wants to take himself public. Mm-hmm. And we could buy shares of him as a business entity. Mm-hmm. And he wants to try to raise $1 trillion and develop a universal income so that there's a certain amount of people who, that's really big dream, but it's a beautiful concept. And I know we all think Brother Kanye is kind of off sometimes.
Special.
But just the fact that he was thinking about helping people.
Yeah.
Was amazing. I mean, I want to call somebody. I want to call Will and say, yo, Will, you know that record you signed to me at West End in 06? Well, we just sold the copyright to it for $300 million. So
that would be nice.
I want to give you. I mean, come on, Beanie Siegel wasn't even thinking of no money. He living a regular life.
Yeah.
And then this guy says, yo, you named me Yeezy? And for that, here's 50 million. That's a beautiful concept, man. That's what I want to do with my life. I want to be able to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're working on today. A lot of my efforts today goes towards some of the charities. You know, when I go out and DJ, if it's not a real paid gig, then I want the promoter to involve themselves with raising money for some kind of charity. We've been able to do it in Newark at the Newark Library. And then just this past September, we were able to send money to Haiti, where we raised funds and garments and everything that we were able to send to Haiti. Right now, what I do is anybody that send me anything to my Cash App, I collect that money, put it in a fund for some homeless shelters that we have here and around Newark. That hopefully that have. I only want to go to the shelters that have kids, because I want to show my son he could be, you know, a blessing to somebody. You ever read the book The Alchemist?
No.
Then we'll talk later.
Okay.
Check that book out. That's an amazing way to inspire yourself.
Gotcha.
Amazing way to inspire yourself.
So, you know, if I had to look at the verses, it would be Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis versus The System. But I can't think of pairing up Blaze with any other group.
It's the only one. And that would be a big thing. Blaze and Masters at Work.
Yeah, but they don't have the in-house singer like what Blaze had.
Masters at Work would win because they got a lot more commercial hits than we have. But as far as variety in music, I think we get them on that.
It's just like people would say, you know, between Prince and Michael won it, but there's a lot of things that Michael can't do that Prince can do, which is sing his own music.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's the difference. One is more popular, of course, but when you can't really measure it pound for pound because it's not really equal. Prince will go to the studio by himself,
right?
To come out with a record. That's Blaze. Just me and Josh, we're gonna come out with a record. We don't call no musicians.
That's why I can't compare Blaze.
Right. Wow. So you really can't compare it.
Can't match it up.
If we was gonna do a versus, it would probably be Blaze versus Masters at Work.
Okay.
That would be a versus.
Kevin, is there anything that we missed that you know that we didn't cover?
I appreciate you guys. You know, outside of talk about my son, I guess me talking about my history is something that I like to do. And I thank you for being bored with me through this whole 2 hours.
No.
Nah, this is history right here.
So interesting.
Going that long. And I hope that I have added some value and have added some, one of my people that I'm really studying now is James Baldwin. I'm interested in his life as an artist because we know him as a social, leader, but as an artist, what inspired him to write those books and what was the approach he took? That's the same thing as producing a record. You can get inspiration from anywhere, Will. It don't have to be listening to another producer. It could be seeing sometime me and Josh would see a painting. You know who Ramiro Bearding is?
No.
Okay, he's an artist, amazing artist. He does collage art. Anytime we see a Ramiro Bearding painting, Josh and I would easily be able to write a song because it just spoke to us in that way.
Right.
I tried to buy an original Ernie Barnes about 4 years ago, but I got outbid it. Ernie Barnes is the guy who did the Good Times.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
All the paintings that JJ did, he did those.
All of JJ's paintings.
All of JJ. I love every aspect of this entertainment world. Every aspect. But I just want to be now that all my life I have done something community minded. When I worked at Shelter, we supported the Hale House.
Nice.
When I got to Cielo, I didn't do a lot of community stuff. We did some things. But as Blaze, from the very first records that us for, it was always talking about world peace.
That's right.
One of the biggest pats on the back I have. Do you know who Aloe Black is? The artist, ALOE BLACC.
Mhm. Yes.
He Grammy award winning artist, huge records, million seller. He covered a Blaze record, We Almost Lived Together.
Mhm.
And that was amazing to me because I'm like, wow, I wrote a song 32 years ago that inspired you to do it today. He chose to sing one of my songs. That's amazing to me. That kind of,
Wow.
it was during the pandemic. It kind of just let me see the blessing of the pandemic. The fact that, like I said, we got on here.
Aloe Black was on Blackish.
Right.
And he did the alphabet song, the commercial that they used to do when we was kids. If I was up, you know.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. I'm just saying he's amazing. Like,
yeah. So I know.
Oh, you know, like somebody like Dave Chappelle can inspire me. When I see how good he is, it makes me want to be that good at my art. Or even when I think about, I mean, something is not as important as Tom Brady. Seeing him do that and the amount of effort, he wants to be great at the craft. That's what I'm going to tell young people. Stop focusing on getting famous. Stop focusing on getting your name out there like Louie Vega. Louie Vega is Louie Vega because he's great at what he does. He's made amazing records. Go make some amazing records. Then your name will get out there. That's really what I want the young people to know. You focused on being famous and not focused on being absolutely great at the art form. That's why we
making good product.
Excuse me?
The focus should be on making good product and not making product that's gonna put your name out there, but just making good product because it'll stand on its own.
Yeah, I mean, look at Strafe. Perfect example. That record was huge. Yeah, he didn't have. It was on his own label. He didn't have no millions of dollars. So if you make a hit record, it's gonna sell itself.
Just Born Records.
Like I said, fantasy.
We got Kevin Hedge in the building.
I'm gonna let you guys go because I know y'all tired of listening to these stories.
Before we go, does anybody have any questions for Kevin Hedge?
I just have something to say.
Go ahead.
I have to say that album of yours, Spiritual Speaking.
Oh,
I love that song, Where You Are.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. That's great that you even know that song.
It's one of my favorites. I mean, you have a lot, but I love that song.
You know what that's inspired off of?
Tell me.
Okay, so Where You Are, that song is inspired from Marvin Gaye doing the same song the Jacksons did. I want to be where you are. Oh. Marvin Gaye did a version, so he inspired us to do our version.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's
where that came from. Excuse me?
It's beautiful. I love it.
Oh, thank you. Well, again, Josh is a love songwriting guy. He's a love songwriting guy.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where that came from. Just
and
being
it's short, but it's sweet.
Well, thank you. I mean, again, that just come from what we in the musicians, they call it shedding. You know what shedding is?
Mm-hmm.
It's just practicing. Mm-hmm. And that just come from practice. Even when guys ask me about, I did a party a while ago and guys ran up to me, yo, where'd you get your records? I'm like, every record I'm playing is on TrackSource. Mm-hmm. That's practice. Mm-hmm. Going there and doing your work. Because, guys wait for like somebody to send them music and then everybody's playing the same record. Mm-hmm. So practice. You gotta want to be great. You gotta do this with a purpose, Will. You gotta want to be excellent. That's what makes me listen to you on Saturday. I want to hear what you're gonna do to inspire me. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you that. I've told you that 100 times. I'll get my Shazam ready. I'll play something that's gonna make me go, God damn, what's that song? So I want to be inspired. That's exactly
That's what's
what I
up.
want to do.
And
that,
you know, I'm sorry.
no, you go.
For many years, you definitely have inspired me and others, and we
No,
thank you for your contributions. You know, one of the things a few things is I'll never, forget is you always, sonic mixing albums. When I first told you, I said, Kevin, I want to do an album. And you said, are you ready to do 100 songs? So that concept came from you because you're like, you got to do at least 100 songs in order to get an album, or at least 30 to get the top 10 songs. So
Right.
that concept that you taught me, I've taught others that, because it's more than just writing music. It's got to make sense, the album.
When Josh and I would do albums, we wouldn't do anything else. We just locked the door. That's it. And then we get the food brought to us. Because, just going through the process of wanting to say something. Because, you talked about spiritually speaking. The original name of that album was 2000 Souls. And that's based on a book, 2000 Souls. And I wrote a poem called Spiritually Speaking. And it's talking about the meaning of the name Blaze. Because people it's a name, acronym. But have you ever, how can I say this? You ever heard of quantum physics?
Yes.
Okay. So in quantum physics, circles, lines, and directions mean certain things. So circles create vision, right? Like your eyes just round, that creates vision. So I used to say the blaze consists of 2 circles and a vertical line. The vertical line connects the upper circle to the lower circle. The upper circle represents the spiritually vision that we have, and the lower circle represents the worldly vision that we have. So with the letter B, that connects those visions. And then I go through each letter. You got to listen to it. I'm not going to do it here. But I go through each letter that way. And L represents the vision of life, from living to dead. So when you're horizontal, you're dead. When you're vertical, you're living. That makes an L. And I went, and so that's where we got the name Spiritually Speaking, is after I wrote that poem. And so that you wouldn't just think Blaze is just, oh, he picked the name. No, it was really born out of spiritual practice, like thinking, well, quantum mathematics and all that kind of stuff, me reading those books, being into metaphysics, understanding the world is that. It's a reason why Jesus' name is Jesus and how many letters he has in his name and why he died at 33. All of these are concepts. And it has to do with the universe. It always comes back to the number 9. I'm not even going to keep going into it, but it always comes back to the number 9.
That's deep.
You already got started.
Excuse me?
I said you already done started. I'm very familiar with what you're talking about, so I'm like, okay, keep building.
So think of this. In the concept of counting, there's only 9 numbers. Because 10 is really not a number. To get a 10, you have to be 1 plus 0 to make it 10. So it's only 1 through 9. So if the greatest of all is the one God, if man is 0, that makes 10. That's how you get greater than God. So there's some mathematics about Jesus' name being 33 adds up to 9. And the feet are squares and the head is a circle. That adds up to 9. Let me stop. Go ahead. But
speaking of the Spiritually Speaking album, there was 2 versions, 2 different album covers. One with you with the cigar, and then there's another one with, I guess, like with the art background.
Yeah, it's well painted.
Okay.
Because when I got to West End, I wanted to put out Found Love. And the only way I could do it was to put it on an album. I wanted it to sell an album. So we put together Then and Now. Like we added a few more songs, put together Spiritually Speaking again. We call it Now and Then, or I forgot what Mel called it. That was his concept to do that. That wasn't my concept. He wanted to re-release it that way because he loved so many of the songs on there. He thought it was amazing, the songs on there. And, he loved those songs. But even like Breathe, anybody does like yoga? Has anybody ever practiced? I'm sure Carolyn does yoga. Well, that song is based on the yoga position Tadasana. And it's lift your heart up to the sky and breathe new life. That's what Tadasana is all about, the breath. And so all of that stuff is mixed up in all of those songs. We can go through it. I mean, not every song was that intense, but I believe you have to read to write. So whatever you're reading, that's going to infiltrate your body, and that's what you're going to produce for the universe. And I wish you could see it. I can't take it over there, but there's a sign on my door. Every time you come in contact with the universe, what should come out of you is excellent. So that inspires me every day to be excellent, even when I'm talking for 3 hours. That's not excellent.
It don't feel like it's 3 hours, but I'm sure that there's so much more that we didn't cover. But I mean, for the people who really got to know Kevin Hedge, today is the day that they really, got 4 steps closer to Kevin Hedge.
I would only do this for you, Will. I mean, people have asked me before, but I told you I'm into energy and spirit, and ever since I know you, man, you've been a beautiful human being.
Thank you.
And that's important for me to highlight that light, your light. So if this could help, turn people on to what you guys do spiritually, do y'all shows on Twitch, I think it's good energy. I want to support that.
Appreciate that. We really do appreciate you.
Very much.
Kevin Hedge.
In fact, Louie wanted to do this interview that I'm doing with you on the radio. He wanted me to do this on the radio. I'm like, no, I'm never doing this on the radio.
Oh.
Wow, we're honored. Yes.
Definitely honored.
Only for, and when Will called me, I told him only for him.
All right, Will.
Wow.
Even me going out to DJ, well, I told you, only certain people in situations. I only want good energy around me. That's it.
Okay.
I only want good. I've been around some people that was shady, and I let it go. And I seen them be shady to people, and I let it pass. When I got to be this age, I didn't feel so good about that. So I said, you know what? I'm not ever doing that again. I'm only gonna be around people that I think are great, or be involved with people that I think have character.
Your vibe is your tribe.
We started with that, right?
We did. Yes.
We started with that kind of, again, that's 9. We went 360 to come back to that original statement that you made earlier. So,
wow. Yes. And it's 6:59.
Look at that.
So 0 plus 3 plus 6, 9. It's always going to come back to 9. Even when you look at the pyramids, it's built on that. But my man over there, RIcoh knows I'm not going to go there, RIcoh. We're going to save that for a whole nother conversation.
You just have to come back.
You crack the door and close it again, and crack the door and close it again.
Because,
you just have to come back.
It's a beautiful thing.
We'll just do part 2.
See, if you open the door too wide, we're gonna be here for 8, 9, maybe 10 hours.
The last thing I want to do is I want to apologize. No, seriously, I want to apologize to you guys.
Why?
Because there was Friday, it was so much going on. Like my son was going through his thing. We was trying to get everything. My mother and my son lives with me. Now, my mother's 80, my son is 10. There we go at 9 again, right? And I was getting them straight, comfortable for the day. And then when I forgot Friday was Friday. I thought it was Thursday. So everything in my day kept getting later and later. And when I got to BLS to do the show, I was overwhelmed. I was just trying to, and I didn't mention that we were doing this today. So anytime you guys do it with somebody you want to highlight, please let me know so I can at least promote it on the radio. Because
we appreciate that.
Well, could you do me a favor? Could you do me a favor?
What's that?
Tell my girl Nunu that RIcoh says hello.
Well, you can call her yourself, man. You don't need me to
I speak to her often, but I want you to tell her that we broke bread.
Well, here's the thing. Since we've been talking, wait a minute, where's it at? See, she's on there. One of the phones, one of the messages that I didn't pick. I didn't answer the phone when she called me.
Mm-hmm.
It's her and there's Ian Friday called me.
Oh, nice.
But I apologize for not.
Right there in the pocket.
No.
I apologize for not doing my part to market this with you guys, and I hate myself for that right now.
Don't do it. Don't do it. It just means you have to come back.
It's all good, you know. It's all good.
That just means there'll be a part 2.
Yeah, that's what I said. You have to do part 2.
Yeah, there's too much of you for one session. We need to get some more.
I don't know what
Kevin,
else to talk about. I mean, the fact that I'm fat.
No.
The fact that I'm fat now.
Listen, what did Mel tell you? Nothing is an accident.
Yeah.
Right, everything happens for a reason.
Nothing happened. He used to say that all the time. And I remember he used to say, I can't remember what I ate for breakfast. So you're asking me, because I used to ask him questions. He'd be like, I can't remember what I ate for breakfast. What are you asking me that for? And he was really a gem. Like,
yeah,
you know, when I think about what he wanted to do for me that I didn't take, like he wanted me to be a part of his hotel. And I just didn't feel comfortable with that. I think it should have went to his family. You know? And you know, he didn't have, well, he was gay, he didn't have any kids.
Yeah.
He was the only child.
Yep.
So we had that in common. So he didn't have much family. And we met Ilya, who ultimately became you know, who took his estate. And Ilya is like a distant cousin. Didn't really, I mean, he knew well, but not well. I mean, we took care of Uncle Mel, you know?
Yeah.
I was in the hospital with him the first day he went there. And that, you know, we did, I knew then, it was him too, that we needed to sell the company because he knew it was close to the end. So he gave me the blessing to sell the company. Did I know it was going to sell? No, I called Universal back. That was it. And then it took about a year to negotiate. But the best thing is that Biggie Smalls sampled some of our records. And I knew then we wasn't going to be playing in them little money no more. I knew then we was going to play real money.
In the little pond.
There you go.
Going to the deep side of the pool.
Right. Like I said, I want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to
thank you
purge
so much.
a little bit. I'm sorry that I went on so long.
It's all good.
You know,
the people in the room don't want you to go. They want you to talk more. But you know, again,
and that's probably good. That's probably good, and I appreciate them. And then, if it's necessary, we will come back and do it again.
All good.
That would be nice. Great.
We can go a little bit deeper into specifics about things.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No doubt. So Kevin, where can people catch you other than WBLS roots?
RIcoh knows. You know, I never had a Facebook account before Nunu showed up in my life, right? So Nunu made me put a Facebook account up. The real Kevin Hedge, and then there's one that's just Kevin Hedge. And then she made me do an Instagram account, the real Kevin Hedge. Then she made me do a Twitch account.
Oh,
So Lulu actually runs all of that for me. I don't.
Yeah.
Every now and again, I can figure out how to post something when it's important. You know, I try to post something that I think is important. Like I like to post my little Rumi quotes. I think it's important what he talked about. You know, that was 3,000 years ago that he lived, and some of that stuff he talked about is today.
That's right.
Relevant. Relevant.
It is
Most
interesting.
def.
All right,
Relevant.
ladies and
Kevin
gentlemen.
Hedge, thank
Thank
you
you
very
very
much.
Thank you.
All right.
This is Bliss on the Spot. We have Kevin Hedge in the building. Came by to break some bread. So please continue to follow the real Kevin Hedge.
Facebook,
IG,
Instagram.
Twitch. He's got a dope show. Was on Fridays on Twitch.
Fridays on Twitch, 10 o'clock. I do a show.
Nice.
Midnight on BLS. I do a show.
Nice.
Gotcha.
And then on our own platform, House Music Community on Air, I do that on Saturdays at 6.
Gotcha.
Because, you know, I tried to bet that Twitch was going to stop DJs from. That's the bet. Well, yeah, but they only did a deal with Warner Brothers so far. They didn't get Universal, and they still got to close with them.
BMG and all, yeah.
Right, they still got to close with them. So we'll see. If they don't close with them, they're gonna go the way of Facebook. And,
Yeah.
They're gonna be like, and YouTube. YouTube doesn't.
Yeah, they shutting it down.
Yeah. So I made the bet thinking that we would have I could build a portal that all of you guys would have to come to me and pay.
Yeah.
Subscription.
Right.
Speaking of the number 9, December 9th, we got DJ Pope joining us here. Bliss on the Spot.
Another Pope.
So so please make sure that you stop by Bliss on the Spot. Kevin Hedge, thank you so much for stopping by. We do appreciate you. We love you much.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Next time we gotta get some collard greens, candy yam, cornbread.
That's what's up.
That's what we eat next time. God bless you. Have a good Sunday. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Now I'm
New light.
so I don't know how to shut this off.
We got you. We got you.
What's
With
funny?
Bliss.
Go ahead. I'm saying.
You want to say something else to the listeners?
No, I was just thinking about when the teacher was doing the Zoom, and he thought he cut it off, and then
it was still on.
Yeah, I'm making sure.
That happens to the best of us.
All right.
Listen, YC, we out. Myself, Will Milton, RIcoh Scott, Coco, Sandy, Paradiselady, Carolyn, Victorian. We thank you. We out. Take care.